Hello, so like all the other what ifs, this isn't mine, it's a fanfic. The link is the description if you want to check it out. Anyways, let's get into it.
Hello?
Anime demigod.
Here?
The captains stood still in their usually formation at Squad 1 barracks. After Aizen's betrayal, they had been informed that a member of the Royal Guard was to come to the Siriti. The Soteiku had been the one to inform the rest of the captains of this message. He had informed them to all be present. Everyone was present. He was not accepting any absence from his captains for this meeting. It was important because a member of the Royal Guard was to come. It was not every day that the member of a Royal Guard came into the Siriti. The Royal Guard protected the Soul King, thus they never got involved in the Soul Society's matters. They stayed away because it was not their jobs. But their jobs was to protect the Soul King. The Godi I-13 was charged with protecting and making sure that Soul Society was a safe place for the souls within the Spirit Word. Amongst the captains, was former captain of the 2nd Division and commander-in-chief of the Covered Corps, and head of the Shihoin clan, Yoriyuki. Yamamoto had called her to come after seeing her at the execution grounds. She was the one who had communication with Urahara Kisuk. The man was a creator of the very same thing Aizen had stolen from Rukia's soul. Her presence was required as she would relay whatever happened to Urahara. He would have to help them out because he was the creator of the Hogyoku. They had no knowledge of it, so it was necessary that he be involved. Yoriyuki had been involved herself because she too had been fighting against Aizen. She could be counted as an ally as she was not an enemy. He was taking advantage of the fact that Central 46 was not operational as of now. Had they been operating, he would never have done something like this. They would have surely gone against the idea. Or perhaps even call for her execution because of her involvement with Urahara. But this was not that time. Urahara would certainly be of use. Aizen was proving to be a bigger threat to Soul Society. But to him, he was but a mere child that needed to be punished for misbehaving. He could count that the former captain was a threat though. His alliance with their mortal enemies, Hollows, did not good. Yamamoto sighed. He was having a bad feeling about this. Something was just not right. Surely by now the Soul King was aware of the situation. But his Royal Guard was never involved in their matters. They always left them to handle things as it was their duty. But now they seemed to be getting involved. He could not think of any good reason why they would announce their coming just after Aizen's betrayal. He wished he knew really what they wanted. It was not long before music invaded their ears and a tall black-haired woman entered the meeting hall. Beside her was a black coffin that was locked with multiple thick gold chains. The coffin was floating in the air by the woman. As soon as Yamamoto saw the coffin, his eyes opened slightly. One could clearly see his eyes and that he was in shock. The look lasted for a few moments though. He was not the only who had wide eyes. The senior captains, Anohana, Kiraku and Yukatake, also had wide eyes. But like Yamamoto, the look only lasted for a few moments. Yoriyuki was quick to notice this fact. Whoever was sealed in the coffin, those four knew who it was. She had no clue who it was. Never had she seen a coffin like that before. She could tell that whatever was holding it was some serious kiddo. The black-haired woman stopped playing her music and stopped walking. In a loud bang, the coffin beside her hit the floor. Before she could say anything, Yamamoto was first to speak in a hardened voice. "Shudera, what is the meaning of this?" he asked, his eyes narrowing at the black coffin. His gut had been right. He was certainly not seeing this coming. If he were having his way, he would have done anything to make sure that he never saw the coffin again. Shudera kept a straight face as she replied. "I was told to bring him back," she said in an even tone. "I don't see why he should be brought back. We can handle Aizen without him, and I don't think he would even be willing to help," Yamamoto said, keeping his tone hard. "I have no doubt you can handle the traitor, Soteiku," Shudera said. "But these are orders from the Soul King." "I see," Yamamoto said. It was final. If it was orders from the Soul King, then he could do nothing about it. His orders were absolute. He could not go against them. "Still, I would have wished he was kept there," he said, voicing out his thoughts. "Come on Yamajiji," Kiraku stated with a small smile. "It will be back to see him again. It has been long since we last saw him." Yukatake nodded. "Yes, it has been long. I wonder though, how things will pan out." Anohana decided to keep quiet despite knowing him that was inside the black coffin. There was certainly no need for her to say anything. If the Soul King has deemed it worthy that he be released, then she would be content with it. Have you two forgotten how he ended up in that coffin? Yamamoto asked seriously at his two students. We have not forgotten, Kiraku said. But I think he would have forgotten about it. Kuratsuke, 12th Division Captain's eyes twitched. They were saying stuff about him and this, but they were not saying who he was. It was annoying to hear them speak like that. Who is he? He asked, voicing out his thoughts. I am also interested in who he is, Captain Hichugaya said with a nod. He had already recovered from his fatal wound, but he was not fully recovered. So far you four, the oldest here, seem to know who is inside that coffin, but you have not said name or who he is. The other captains nodded in agreement. They were also curious as to who he was. They had never heard anything about the black coffin. But considering that it came with the royal guard, it had to mean that it was residing in the Soul King's dimension. Yamamoto sighed and closed his eyes. He opened one and looked at Anohana. She was quiet. He did not think she would be quiet seeing his coffin. They had been friends before he was sealed. He looked back at Shudera. He wondered what was going inside her head with him about to be released. All info about him had been closely guarded. He was not commonly known. Only a few knew of him. Every record about him in public hold was erased after he was sealed. He never thought he would be standing here trying to explain who he was. You will be told who he is after Shudera does what she has to do, Yamamoto said finally. For the first time, Shudera smiled. Will you be able to break the seal on your own? Yamamoto asked. Shudera nodded. It was been broken by the Soul King before I came here. There is only one layer holding it. The reason he has not broken out yet is because he is currently in deep sleep and won't awaken until the seal is fully broken. She explained what she had been told. The Soul King had broken the seal himself, given that it was his seal. Be on guard. I don't know what he might try to do after he awakens. The Soteiko stated firmly. He certainly did not know how he would react after being released. It had been a long time since he was sealed. He was not going to take any chances with him. Shudera turned to face the coffin before performing a small ritual and breaking the last layer of the seal. It required much of her Ryotsu to do so. But it did not take long for her to finish her ritual. As soon as the coffin was opened, a massive wave of Ryotsu hit around the atmosphere. The spiritual pressure was dark and potent. Anyone less than a captain would have surely been knocked down by it. Some few less experienced captains were having troubles standing up from the pressure. It was dark and potent, unlike anything they had ever felt before. Zaraki Kenpeki only grinned in excitement. Such Ryotsu only reminded his love for a battle. Someone of this spiritual pressure would certainly give him a good and enjoyable fight. He had been craving for one recently. But there seemed to be no one there to offer him the good fight. The Ryotsu was also foreign. It did not feel like it belonged to a hollow or a Shinigami. It was unlike anything some had ever felt before. Judging from the Ryotsu, they could not tell what sort of creature was being released. Just as it had appeared, the Ryotsu disappeared like it was never there. They could no longer feel it, not even a trace of it was left. Because the explosion of Ryotsu died down, it cleared the view for them to see what was sealed inside the black coffin. There was a man. He was fair-skinned and had sun-kissed blonde hair reaching down his waist. It was odd given that some had never seen hair of that bright. They had seen blonde before, but just not so bright and long. The man was wearing black pants and a long red coat with high collars. The coat had black flames pattern at the hemline and at the collars. Under the coat he wore a black long-sleeved t-shirt. That t-shirt clearly framed his chest and left some of his chest just below his neck partly visible. There was no sword on him, but he had a red sash on his waist. Shudera was still standing in front of the coffin in anticipation. She had a small smile on her face as she waited for him to awaken. She thought he was taking time to do so. She could not wait to look into his eyes once more. Suddenly, the man's eyes snapped open. They were the oddest thing the younger captains had ever seen. His eyes were blood red with 6 blades in each. The blades seemed to be spinning in opposite directions per eye. They stopped suddenly and the man's body moved out of the coffin. The captains were on guard because they did not know how we would react. They had their hands on their swords, except for Shudera, Anohana, Kiraku, and Yukatake. They were on guard but did not seem to be ready to draw out their weapons any time soon. They were all sporting smiles, friendly smiles. Still, no Ryotsu could be sensed from the man. There was just nothing from him. If one could not see him, one could believe that he was not there. It was quite frankly scary as one could not sense anything from him. The blonde man stopped just inches away from Shudera. She was about an inch taller than him. He stared into her eyes in an expressionless face. The woman wore a smile the whole time, but began to become nervous as the man simply stared at her for about a minute without a word or his expression changing. It was just blank, just as his eyes were. The rest of the captains simply stayed quiet, waiting for the man to say his first words. Although it did not seem like he would be saying anything soon, they would wait for him. The blonde-haired man's hand moved slowly towards Shudera's face. It seemed as if he was not going to do anything. Then he suddenly grabbed her neck and began to choke the life out of her. Shudera tried to get out of his hold, but she was failing miserably at her attempts. Her eyes were wide as she started to panic in fear, thinking that she was going to be killed. His expression had not changed as he strangled her. "You will kill her if you continue to do that," Anohana stated with her kind smile. She was merely stating the obvious. If he continued to cut off her air supply, then she would die because of lack of oxygen. That was no way for a Shinigami to die, especially a member of the Royal Guard. The sound of her voice seemed to get the man's attention as his eyes turned to her. He let go of Shudera, allowing her to catch her breath. His eyes were still on Anohana as he did so. Despite the woman giving him a kind smile, he did not return her the smile. His face stayed as it was, expressionless. He looked around before speaking. "Siriti," he said quietly, his eyes still at the ceiling. He brought them back and looked at Shudera, who was now up from her knees, but one of her hands was still on her neck. He held out his hand, seemingly checking something. Something akin to realization phased through his blank face. His eyes narrowed to Shudera. "Why have I been brought back in this state?" The question was not anything polite. He was demanding an answer. His tone clearly stated that Shudera was not given choice. It was just a precaution, since the Soul King did not know how you would react after being awakened. He also stated that you did not need to be at your former self as. Shudera trailed off when she saw his eyes staring at her unblinking. "You don't know what you are talking about. You simply making things up because you were not given reasons," the blonde said evenly. "How many times have I told you to keep your mouth shut if you do not know what you are talking about?" Shudera merely smiled. The rest of the occupants seemed to be just watching the interaction. They did not seem like they wanted to join in any time soon. "Where is Amaterasu?" the blonde asked again, leveling Shudera with an intense gaze under his hypnotic eyes. "Here she is," Shudera stated with a small smile. She took out a normal blade katana from her robes and handed it to the blonde. The katana was pure black, it had no other color on it. The blonde-haired man got hold of the katana only for a moment before breaking it in half and throwing it back to Shudera. "That is not my sword, Shudera," he said in a low tone. "Where is my sword?" Shudera had no idea about it. The sword looked like his when she was given it. She did think that it was a fake. Even her fellow royal guards did not say anything about the katana. They all thought it was the real thing. If it is not real, it only meant that the Soul King must have created a new one. "You did not know about it," the blonde said. It was clear from her expression that she did not know about the katana. "That fool for a king. Does that thing not know that it is not good to separate me from my blade? Siriti will burn to the ground if I do not get my sword back." The others were quite surprised that he had actually addressed the Soul King as a fool and thing. Just who was this man to have the guts to call the Soul King a fool in front of the captains of the Godii 13? It was even more interesting that a royal guard said nothing about it. She was a guard to the Spirit King, she should not allow anyone to speak of him as the blonde had done. "I was told to give you this should you threaten Siriti," Shudera stated, removing a small scroll from her robes. She handed it to the blonde, who accepted it. He read it with an expressionless look on his face. After a minute, the scroll disappeared from existence into thin air. "That paranoid fool is smart. I never thought he would be capable of doing something like this. He brought me back in this state so that he would not face the dangers of separating me with my blade, and punishment for my sealing," the blonde stated, not even sounding the slightest bitter about it. "Without my blade I cannot travel to his dimension, nor can I access my Bankai. It is fine though, it is not like I did not expect this. I will get my Zanpakuto back one or the other," he thought. The blonde then held out his right hand and a black sphere of condensed Ryotsu began to form. It was obvious that the technique he was preparing was lethal. This time they could feel the Ryotsu coming from the technique. It felt like hollow. "Are you going to kill her?" Anohana asked with her usually kind smile. She was asking thinking that he wanted to hit Shudera with the technique that seemed like a zero. But she knew it was indeed a zero. The action had every captain on guard. But the blonde simply turned around and blasted the coffin he had been sealed within. When the technique hit the coffin, it vaporized it, leaving nothing behind. Nonsense, I could never do that, unless I am given a reason to do it, the blonde said, looking at Shudera even though he was answering Anohana's question. Ah, it is good that being sealed for many years has not affected your mind, Anohana stated. It is good to see that you have not reverted. There was certainly a hidden meaning under those words. Anohana chose not to comment on it, though. Shudera, come closer to me, the blonde-haired man stated. The called woman took a few steps towards him. However, before anything could be said, Yamamoto finally spoke. Uchiha Naruto, he said, tapping the floor with his staff. He was certainly glad that the man did not have his Zanpakuto. Without his blade, he would be manageable if anything should come. Nevertheless, with him, you could never know. It certainly would not have been wise to awaken him in all his glory. If something like that was done, he would simply cause more trouble than they needed. Having him in his current was at least satisfying. He never showed any of his thoughts to anyone though. Yamamoto's calling of the name now gave the others who did not know him his name. To some the name seemed to click in their heads, but they could not quite catch it. Naruto turned to the Soteiku. Genri Yusai, you are still alive. There was no surprise in his voice nor his face. You look pathetic though. I have no doubt you will someday kick the bucket while standing like that, he stated flatly. Yamamoto's eyes twitched as soon as Naruto opened his mouth. Zaraki merely grinned. He certainly liked the blonde's style. To call out the Soteiku like that took some guts. Even he had never said something like that. However, this man had said it so simply, as if he was not even afraid of the old man. You have not changed, Naruto? Kiraku asked his former friend with a smile. Even though he was sealed for nearly 1,000 years, he thought that the man would have changed. Naruto looked at the man. You have become old Shunsui, he said before turning to Yukatake. You look frail, Jushiro. It is as if a mere punch from your sensei will be enough to erase your existence. Yukatake merely smiled, taking no offense in the words. You look young, he said. Certainly, Naruto looked a lot younger than him and Kiraku. However, it was not the case. Naruto was slightly older than both them, and yet he still looked like he was around Byakuya's age. Naruto turned back to Shudera. Follow me, he said, and disappeared. With a single glance to Anohana, Shudera also disappeared. Somewhere in Siridi. How long has it been? Naruto asked quietly as he sat down on top of a roof in one of the random buildings in Siridi. Shudera had just appeared beside him. 950 years, 8 months, she answered, sitting close by Naruto. She seemed happy to see the man, if the warm smile on her face was any indication. That long? Naruto said, looking at the skies. It certainly has changed around here, he said while his eyes were still staring at the sky. He was not even looking around him to make that comment. He could feel that most things have changed around the atmosphere. Yes, it has, Shudera agreed with a nod. Well, it has been almost 1,000 years, a world like this is bound to change over those years. I guess you are right. Naruto looked away from the sky and placed his right hand under his chin. Why have I been brought back? 3 of the Godei 13 captains have turned traitors and joined the Hollows. They also have something powerful called the Hogyuku. I don't know much about it. But I don't think that it's something that the remaining captains can't handle, Shudera explained. It was curious because Yamamoto was still just as powerful. He could take on anyone. Sure, the traitors were still a threat, but there was still Anohana, Kiraku, and Yukatake, and Yamamoto. The 4 of them were far powerful than the rest of the captains. They could surely deal with the current problem. Naruto took a thoughtful look for a moment before speaking. No, that does not seem to be the case, he said, surprising Shudera. Awakening me is a risk on its own. You also cannot guarantee that this will pique my interest enough to even take part. Oh, there was that part, Shudera thought. There was indeed no guarantee that Naruto would even take part in the battle against the traitors. Given the fact that they had sealed him, he could simply refuse to take part in the battle. If the situation was troubling, the Soul King could have found a way to handle him other than taking away his Zanpakuto. She did think that he had done more than just to take away his Zanpakuto. That thing could no longer suppress me any longer, Naruto said impassively. Suppress you? The first time I was sealed, I escaped. But the second time I could not escape because the seal was stronger, but eventually I would break free. When you moved me into the other dimension, that thing used its power to suppress me and force me to sleep. How did you escape the first seal anyway? And what do you mean that the Soul King forced you to sleep? Isn't that anyone who is sealed automatically put in a suspended death sentence? Shudder questioned, looking at Naruto inventively. Naruto narrowed his eyes at her for a second before looking away. I was not weak for be sealed by such a pathetic seal. My Ryutsu is also potent, which made it impossible for me to sleep. It kept fluctuating inside the coffin, trying to find a way out. When that thing used its power to suppress my Ryutsu, I was able to sleep. He also ensured that I could not escape. Shudder nodded. So you were awakened because the Soul King could no longer suppress you. Naruto nodded. This was also the best way to manage me, he said. Are you going back to that thing? Shudder looked down, unable to face him, as she answered, yes. As much as she wanted to stay, she had a job to do, a job she had sworn with her life that she would do until her body could no longer allow her to do so. I was thinking we could catch up before I go away, she said again to face Naruto, realizing that he was now on his feet. When she did, she smiled sadly, looking at him. You are not going to allow me, she said. Naruto kept his expression impassive and bent towards her. He kissed her on her forehead before disappearing without a word. Meanwhile, what the hell was that? Yuriyuki asked after Naruto had disappeared with Shudder. He had insulted the Soul King, Yamamoto, and then walked away. None of the senior captains seemed to be too bothered by it. It was as if they were used to hearing him say something like it. Genri Usaidano, why did you allow that man to be so disrespectful towards you and the Soul King? Komamura asked in his respectful tone. He had always respected the Soteiku. He did not appreciate when someone did not do the same. It is not a question of whether he allowed it or not. The truth is, he just could not do anything about it, Kiraku stated nonchalantly. This surprised many. The Soteiku could not do anything? Just who was that man? Who was he to act the way he did and still get away with it, not because the Soteiku allowed him to go unpunished, but because he just could not do anything? Yamamoto hit the floor with his staff, silencing everyone. Enough, he said in an even tone, quieting the murmurs that had begun. You will be told more about Uchiha Naruto in the next days, Yamamoto stated in a stern tone, leaving no room for argument. For now, go back to your squads. Dismissed. He looked at Yuriyuki. You stay, he said. After all the captains had left, he spoke. You will have Urahara Kisuke here in 3 days. He knows more about the Hogyuka than anyone else here. His tone was even. Yuriyuki merely nodded. Do not fear anything, Yamamoto said, earning a surprised look from Yuriyuki. But the Soteiku did not dwell on it. He dismissed her without any further word. The goddess of Flash wondered what the old man meant. He was not the one to show pity. Still, she hoped that Siridi did not plan anything against Kisuke. They needed him though. He was by far the smartest man she has ever known. Well, with the Godai 13 requesting Kisuke's help, things were to become seriously intense and hard. She no doubt would have to do many things. There was also Aizen, who posed the bigger threat than anyone else. She did not think he would get his claws on the Hogyuku. Well, Kisuke will surely think of another way to deal with the traitor of a captain. There was also the mystery of Uchiha Naruto. She was curious as to who the man really was. Why he was sealed. Kisuke would surely be able to tell her something about it though. He knew many things that many did not know. A few hours later, Shudder was walking inside Naruto's secluded house. It was just outside of Siridi's civilization, yet still within the home of Shinigami. Ever since Naruto was sealed, she had only came here once. The house still looked fine despite being thousands years old. Naruto himself had not been using it the time he was sealed, since he had created another home. Well, it was made of spirit particles. Anything made of that could never really rust. It stayed the same unless someone destroyed it. The house was hidden, no one would really come across it, no matter how one looked around the place. Naruto had created it at this location because he disliked living with the rest of the other Shinigami. A place like this was also comfortable for him. He had all the privacy he needed. Shudder opened the door and entered the house. She did not think that Naruto would be here. He was probably out of Siridi by now. It was best if he was not here though. She doubted he would even say anything more unless she was going to be telling him that she would be staying. Outside, the house looked like a 2-room house, but the real house was built underground. It had everything a Shinigami could ever want in a house. It still surprised her how Naruto could grow plants underground where there was no sun. "Yair, I did not think I would find you here," Anohana stated, looking straight at Shudera with her kind smile. "Well, you did. I assume you were looking for him," Shudera stated, looking back the captain of the 4th Division in the Godii 13. Anohana nodded, "But I presume he is not here." Seeing that look on your face, Retsu stated, walking closer to Shudera. She could only guess that something that she did not like had occurred between her and Naruto. Shudera sighed. "I talked with him for a few minutes, but then left me when I told him that I would be returning to the Soul King's dimension." She explained things to the other woman. Anohana was not the least surprised to hear that. She could only expect Naruto to act that way. "Do you blame him?" she asked quietly. Shudera shook her head. "I just thought he would at least understand or smile. But he did not. He walked away from me without saying a word." "Understand?" Anohana questioned, not expecting Shudera to answer the question. "He understood when you left him alone. He understood when you took part in his sealing, even though it felt like a betrayal." She paused for a moment, giving Shudera a scrutinizing gaze. "He was just released. It has been 950 years, and you are still going to leave him." Shudera became quiet for a moment. "You know, we never even spoke about the fact that I took part in his sealing. I do wonder why he is not furious about it though," she said, taking a thoughtful look on her face. "That is because it was something a part of him wanted," Anohana stated, surprising Shudera. "What? When you left, he was left with nothing. There was nothing for him to do. He was left bored and had nothing to do. He suddenly lost interest in everything and quit his position as captain," Anohana explained. "There was no reason for him to live. I believe that he allowed himself to be sealed. Even if he did not allow himself to be sealed, he still wanted something like that. He called himself God, and with the things he could do, I would not say otherwise. Do you think there could be a seal that could him down?" Shudera was left speechless. She had not been informed of his after Naruto was sealed. She assumed everything was well because of the fact that he still looked normal. "So that is why he was not angry at anyone for the sealing," she said after getting her speech back. "But what is in his heart has not changed." Anohana nodded, "But I think he will try to do things differently this time." "Hard to believe," Shudera said with a sigh. "I do wish I could be here though," she said sadly. But out of her personal needs, she put her duty first. It was something that even Anohana understood. "You have an important job to do. Only a handful of people can achieve that power to get them to be selected for Squad 0, Anohana stated after a nod. "But Naruto does not care about that," she said. Really, the blonde did not care about any duty that had to be done in Siridi or in the Soul King's dimension. He had no respect for the Soul King to begin with. He had made it clear that the Spirit King was useless and did not know how to do his job as king. "Aside from me, you are the only one else who understands him. Do you think he hates me for this?" Shudera questioned. She did not think so, but she was not sure. Anohana would certainly offer her an honest answer. Anohana shook her head with a small smile. "No, he cannot hate you," she said. Shudera could sense something. "But that does not mean that he cannot kill you. If he wanted to, he would have, despite saying that he could not. The reality is that he just did not want to, not can't. Shudera smiled sadly. "I know that. He has told me that before," she said. Naruto had let her know that if she pushed him off the limits he would kill her. "I am not surprised," Anohana said. Dealing with him, she would not be surprised if he had said something like that, even to Shudera. "Can you do me a favor?" Shudera asked, wiping off her sad expression. Her face became unreadable. "I know what you are going to ask, but I don't think I can do that," Anohana stated, knowing what Shudera wanted off her. It had to do with Naruto. She did not want to do it. But then again, even if she wanted to do it and Naruto did not permit it, there would be not result. "You will or I will." Anohana cut Shudera off. "Or you will what?" she asked with that kind smile that has anyone frightened of her. The following day, Human World. Yuriuki entered her longtime friend's shop with a small smile on her face. She really did like coming down here. Kisuke was her friend, a very good friend. They shared their birthdays and had a lot of memories together. He was one person she had her complete faith and trust in. But of course, Kisuke had his moments that often annoyed her to no end. There was also the fact that he was very playful. She too was playful, but Kisuke often showed his personality in some matters that did not call for it. Well, it was that personality that kept him as he was. He was always calm in every situation because of that personality. She came across Tessai as soon as she entered the shop. "Where is Kisuke?" she asked quietly. Tessai smiled before turning around. "Owner. Yuriyuki-san is here," he yelled. No sooner than later, Urahara Kisuke came out with his jovial smile. He waved his hand fan in front of his face, hiding his smile. "Yuriyuki, it is nice to see you," he said happily. Yuriyuki refused to say anything and walked towards a room they could speak. Kisuke followed her from behind. Upon reaching the designated room, both sat down. "I thought you were going to return along with Ichigo and his friends," Urahara stated. "Imagine my surprise when Ichigo tells me that you would return alone at a later date." Since Soul Society was willing to allow Ichigo and his friends to go, Yuriyuki had not bothered to return to here. There was also the fact that the captain commander had requested that she stay behind. She also had personal matters she had to solve with Swifon. "Did Ichigo tell you everything?" Yuriyuki asked. "He only told me that Rukia was saved, that is what he had gone to Soul Society for, and his major battles. I did not question him about anything else because he would not explain things the way you would," Urahara answered in a rare slight serious tone. "But he did fill me on the fact that Aizen got my Hogyuku and was scary strong," he finished looking at his friend calmly. Yuriyuki nodded. Yes, he did get it. He also slaughtered Central 46 and had been the one to make decisions for some time now, even the one concerning Rukia. He ordered her execution just so he could get his hands on the Hogyuku. She then went to tell Kisuke everything she had witnessed. She told him of the fact that Aizen had not been working alone, but with Ichimarujin and Kaname-tuan. Urahara was not surprised to hear that Aizen had not been working alone. He had known about it already. He knew before he even left Soul Society. He was surprised though, when he was told that the man had joined the Hollows. If he had joined the Hollows, it meant that he would be having some strong Hollows under his control. Even weak Hollows could become a great threat if they are under the control of a man with a mind like Aizen. There was no doubt about that given the kind of man Aizen was. "So that is what happened," Yuriyuki said after concluding what she had witnessed. "I did not think that he would get it," Urahara stated. Charging by his voice and look on his face, he did not seem to be too bothered by it. "Neither did I, but he did. Well, I will have to begin work on how to deal with this," Kisuke said, becoming happy of all the sudden. "Before I forget, the Soteiku requested that you be in Soul Society in 2 days." "I see," Urahara breathed out, not even seeming alarmed by the call. "Well, I guess this is expected," he said. "There is something else, someone rather," this picked up Urahara's interests. There was a man named Uchiha Naruto that was brought by Shutara, a member of Squad Zero. He had been sealed for many years, I don't know how many. "Uchiha Naruto, you say?" Urahara said, his face adopting a serious look for a second. Certainly, there was no one else with those names, it had to be him. "Yes, do you know him? He called the Soteiku pathetic and insulted his age, he called the Soul King a thing and a fool. He did so in front of the captains without fear," the goddess of Flash explained. "I see. So you must be asking yourself questions, who is he to insult the Soteiku? Who is he to call the Soul King a fool? Why didn't the Soteiku do anything when he did so? Why was he sealed in the first place?" Yuriyuki nodded. Urahara smiled. "I can only tell you that Uchiha Naruto is the one who inspired both Aizen and I to create the Hogyuku. And that he was the captain of the 5th squad for some time," he stated. "You are going to tell me more than that, Kisuke. Don't worry, the captain commander will tell everything. So far, anything about him has been heavily hidden and restricted." Meeting day. Yamamoto looked at his subordinates, they were all present. He had thought that Yukatake would not come because of his health issues. Mostly, his illness made it impossible to come at the meetings. During these days, his illness had become more troubling. It stood in the way of most of his activities. He wished that his student would live long enough before he died. But the sickness was getting to him. It even acted up while he was fighting. At least Yukatake was not weak. If he was, it would have caused his premature death. His guest was also present at the meeting. He had thought that the man may perhaps refuse to come because of his history with the Soul Society. But he was glad that he had decided to come. The info he would offer them would certainly become useful for them when dealing the Aizen. They had to know as much as they could about the Hogyoku. So far, he knew nothing about it. But Urahara, being the creator, had much information about it. He also was taking a chance with the man because Urahara had been banished from Soul Society by Central 46. They would certainly not be pleased to know that the man they once banished was walking around in Soul Society with a huge smile on his face. It was good that they were not there since Aizen had slaughtered them. But he was sure in the few days more members would be selected and they would return to ruling. He had been unable to find Naruto. He had sent some of his Surobinates to search for the man, but all the searches had been unfruitful. It was hard when the man's Ryutsu could not be sensed by anyone else. Even he could not sense the man's Ryutsu no matter how hard he tried. It was not always like that, he once could sense, as everybody could. However, when he became even more powerful, no one was able to sense his Ryutsu. He had stopped searching, though. He figured that when that man had stopped doing whatever that he was doing, he would show himself. He hated dealing with Naruto because of it. He could never tell where he was or what he was doing unless Naruto himself bothered to inform him. Dealing with that man, he knew that not everything was under his control. There was a good thing about his unsealing though, he was not as powerful as he was. He did not even have his precious Zanpakuto. This meant that he would not be able to use his Bankai and never reach his full power. He would only be able to use a temporary sword, then again, most times he never used his real sword when fighting unless the opponent was worthy of it. He had also sensed that when he awakened his Ryutsu was not as powerful as it was. It was still powerful, but not as powerful as the old days. He had sensed it when Naruto's Ryutsu had exploded the time he awoke. All this spelled good thing to him. This way, Naruto would be more manageable as he won't cause much more destruction. Since everyone is here, let us begin with the meeting. Yamamoto said with a firm tone. Why is this man here? Kuratsuka blurted out, finally unable to contain himself. He never liked Urahara Kisuke. Swyfon also seemed to agree with him. She too did not like the lazy bastard. He had been the one to take away her Urayuki-sama from her. She could never like or forgive that man for it. I called him here, Yamamoto answered evenly. This shut up the 12th squad captain. But it did not stop him from giving Urahara a slight glare. It was frustrating when the man merely smiled at him as if he was not bothered by his glare. Nothing much had changed from what Urahara could see. There was no one in the meeting he did not know. He knew all the captains, some from personal experiences, some because, well, he knew them. He was a curious person after all. Knowing as much about his former home was not out of the question for him. Despite also being banished, he would never want this place to be destroyed. He may never return to take his duties as captain, but he would help whenever he could. Soul Society had been his home after all. Urahara Kisuke, will share with us your knowledge of the Hogyoku. Yamamoto said, getting the meeting underway. It may have sounded like a question, but Urahara knew that it was no question. He was being instructed to tell everything about the Hogyoku. It appears that he has not changed a bit, Urahara thought. When I created the Hogyoku, I was trying to find a way to. Urahara explained the origins of the Hogyoku to everyone at the meeting as well its purpose, why he had created it. He told them of what it could do, based on what he has seen it do, that is. Yamamoto stroked his beard as he absorbed Urahara's information. I see, he said finally. Is it working now? Urahara shook his head. No, when I hid it inside Kukaki-san's soul it was in its slumber. It won't be long it awakens though, he said. We have time to figure out Aizen's plans, Yamamoto stated. You will work with Captain Kuratsuki in uncovering what Aizen plans to do with the hollows. You will also have Yuka-take and Shunsui to help you in the search. Is there going to be a problem? No, not at all, Urahara answered, keeping his smile. Good, Yamamoto stated. We will have to deal with the vacant posts left behind by Aizen and his subordinates. But as of now, there is no one suitable to be captains. We will leave them as they are, for now. That is, unless anyone suggests that someone is worthy of the position of captain to fill in the vacant posts. The captains shook their heads. In the current Shinigami they had, there was no one strong enough to be given a chance to become captain. This meant that the lieutenants will be charged with taking care of some duties their captains normally did. The other duties will be filled in by volunteers. Komamura volunteered to carry Tuan's squad until a captain was found. Captain Hachugaya took Jin's squad. The only squad that was left without a caretaker was the 5th Squad, Aizen's division. No one seemed to be willing to take care of it until a replacement is found. I have someone in mind to take care of the 5th Squad, Yamamoto said. But he was not about to elaborate anything further on that matter. I believe it is time we are informed of just who Uchiha Naruto is, a stoic Kukaki Byakuya stated, earning nods from some of the captains who were in the dark like him. Yamamoto sighed inwardly. He really did not like talking about that man. Uchiha Naruto appeared around 2,600 years ago. Nobody knew where he came from, he never told anyone. He was just about 165 years old when I came across him. He was by no means a normal child. He was in a secluded place when I found him because souls around him died because of his spiritual pressure. 2,000 years ago, I came across him again and he was holding Amaterasu. He had just finished killing about 100 Shinigami. When I questioned him about it, he merely stated that they were trash. I found that they were corrupt Shinigami, that was why he had killed them. Because I had taken an interest in him, I let him go but kept monitoring him. So he is at around the same age as Kiraku and Yukatake, Urahara thought. He had not seen him, but by the surprised looks on some captains, he could confirm Yoriyuki's words when she said he looked young, even younger than him. I recruited him and trained him along with Yukatake and Shunsui around 1,800 years ago. He was willing to do so because of his loneliness. He had grown up lonely because of his power. He became lively and good friends with my other 2 students. He was by far the better students than those 2. After some years, he changed as his had grown to levels I could not have imagined. However, he changed after that. His growth was not stopping. He never used his Zanpakuto when fighting hollows or other Shinigami. He only drew out his blade when he was fighting a captain class opponent. After 100 years, he disappeared for 600 years. When he came back 1,200 years ago, that was around the time I had founded the Godai 13. As I have said, he became before Shunsui and Yukatake. He was one of the original captains of the Godai 13. He became cold and distant, and always had a bored expression on his face. He quit the Godai 13 because he no longer cared for anything and was against Soul Society's laws. That was after 60 years of service. Shunsui and Yukatake had not even come close to becoming captains at that time. It was around that time that we discovered something special about him, his eyes. He never explained what they did, but said that they held greater power. When he told me that he was stronger than me, I refused to believe it. To show it to me, he released his true Bankai. I had never seen it before. It was the first time I thought that I would not win a battle. I also realized that he also had Quincy powers. He refused to tell me how he got them. 1,100 years ago, he disappeared and could no longer be seen. Anohana found him 100 years later. But he was different. He had gone through an evolution. He could use hollow powers as well as Shinigami. He had no mask like your friends, Urahara. The said man nodded. He already knew that Naruto could use hollow powers. He was just never able to find out how he came to use those powers. It was written that the key lied on his eyes. However, no one was able to find anything about his eyes. He never told a single soul about them. Yamamoto continued while the others listened. Ever since he was captain, Central 46 had always been wary of him because of his power and the fact that he was always against their laws. However, because no one was fully able to tell how powerful he was, they did not do anything. When I fought him under the orders of Central 46, he absorbed Ryujinjaka's flames, flames that could turn Siriti into ruins. His own Zanpakuto was an element type. Its flames were powerful enough to stop mine. When he absorbed the flames, he gained the younger look he has now and his spiritual pressure disappeared. He explained to me that he was only lacking one element to evolve further, and my flames had acted as that element. He explained that I could no longer sense his Ryutsu because he was in a higher dimension of power than that of me. He refused to fight any further before I could release by Bankai and said that he would no longer live under the Soul King's rule. He would become the Spirit God. Central 46 wanted to send all the captains to kill him, but the Spirit King forbade it. During the Quincy War, he simply watched and refused to take part in it. He said that it was of no interest to him. This pushed the Soul King to act. There was also the fact that he kept disappearing without a trace. He had also demonstrated that he could do things that no one could do. He sent his royal guard to deal with him. Naruto had been expecting this. The royal guard could not kill him because he was immortal. They settled to seal him. They achieved that feat, but not more than a year after being sealed, he escaped the seal and disappeared. It was not the first time he had done it. We later discovered that he had gone to his own dimension, the dimension of the soul god as he called it. He always went to the dimension when he disappeared. The royal guard came back with means to open a portal towards the dimension. They were blessed with some of the Soul King's power. The Goti 13 and the royal guard traveled towards the dimension. No one below captain can exist there. The Rishi there was thick and potent. Anyone less than captain will cease to exist upon entering his dimension. The royal guard was the one to fight him. We were told to return here. It did not take long for them to come back saying that they had defeated him. The place became quiet for a few moments as everyone digested what they had been told. The man was truly powerful. Urahara found himself surprised. The books had made him look less powerful than Yamamoto had said. He could not help but compare him to Aizen though. The traitorous captain also sought to become god. While others felt wary of the man, Zaraki merely grinned in an unhealthy way. Another that was grinning was Kuratsuke. Is this dimension of God still accusable? He asked a bit excitedly. No, Yamamoto replied. When the coffin Naruto was sealed within was taken to the Soul King's dimension, the royal guard tried to enter the dimension. The Soul King wanted to take the dimension for his own use. According to the royal guard, Naruto's dimension was better than the Soul King's. But it was impossible to enter. It was later hypothesized that no one could enter unless Naruto was within the dimension. The key to entering the dimension was Naruto and his Zanpakuto. Without the two, the portal to his dimension cannot be opened, Anohana explained, taking over from Yamamoto. Kuratsuka frowned at the answer. This also explains why he was not brought back with his Zanpakuto, he said. Precisely that, Anohana stated. So we can assume that he is not strong as he was, Toshiro stated. Yamamoto nodded. He is not strong as he was. If he was, this building would not have been standing now. It would have been destroyed when he was awakened. But he can still fight. That came from a wide grin Zaraki. Yes, using a Zanpakuto was not the only thing that he could do, Yukatake stated. Naruto was skilled in every art, there was no question to that. He was just at his best when blade. That was what the bloodthirsty captain wanted to hear. Nothing else mattered to him. As long as the man could still fight, he was happy. Yamamoto sighed inwardly. He just hoped that Zaraki did not go around to pick a fight with Naruto. It would prove disastrous should he do that. Naruto may not be as strong as he was, but he was still strong. Any fight involving him had to have collateral damages. That included with Zaraki, the damage would be great. But knowing Naruto, he would refuse to fight the 11th Division captain. Not that the man would take no for an answer. I believe we have discussed. Yamamoto trailed off when he heard a buzz of static inside the room. Naruto appeared in the room. This is just great, Yamamoto groaned. This was unexpected. He was not expecting the man to appear in this meeting. He would just make things worse with his appearance and he did not want to have a headache anytime soon. Uchiha-take-ku, how nice of you to be here, Anohana stated looking at the former captain. She still called captain despite him quitting the job. Well, she only did that in front of other people. It's always lovely to crash a meeting and see Yamamoto annoyed, Naruto stated as he walked towards the other captains. He stood in the middle of the captains and stared at Yamamoto. I hear that a child who grew up before your very eyes managed to escape you before your very eyes, he said. Have you grown weak, Yamamoto? Naruto, he had the Minos pull him out of here to escape from us, Shunsui said. They were unable to do anything because of it. Had not be for the Minos, they would have surely captured Aizen. What were you doing while he was parading at the Sokoyu Hill? Have you lost your purpose, Shunsui? Naruto questioned, now turning his attention to Shunsui, who had the audacity to defend the situation. He had been told that the man had his time around the execution grounds to play with the Ryoka and take the Hogyoku. Had they been there, it would never have happened. What has happened, happened, Yamamoto stated firmly. Next time I will not allow him to escape. Yamamoto, those fools in Central 46 were killed under your nose. That child made decisions that Central 46 ought to have been making. And you failed to see that. Because they were orders, you chose to blindly follow them even though you could question them, Naruto shook his head. You disappoint me. At least Shunsui and Jushiro were willing to fight for what they believed in. You on the other hand were willing to even go as far as to punish them. Has following orders robbed you of your ability to define what is wrong and right? You choose to blindly follow. Enough. I will not tolerate this. Yamamoto stated with a stern tone, releasing some of his riot. Naruto ignored his words. Nonsense, you call Soul Society's laws. What kind of laws are they if they continue to judge even the innocent? Your age has made you even one-track-minded, Yamamoto. You cannot do anything other than follow orders. If you cannot define good from evil, then you should as well commit seppuku. Naruto's words left the younger captains speechless. They had never seen anyone talk to the strongest Shinigami like that. To be able to talk to the Soteiko like that took guts. There was also the fact that there was some truth in his words. Not all of them agreed with Rukia's execution. It was obvious to everyone that the Soteiko followed Soul Society's laws to the core. Naruto walked towards the Soteiko and stood beside him. He could tell that Yamamoto was holding himself from releasing his blade. The man did not appreciate being insulted. But he had to say it. It was one of the reasons he quit the Godai 13 in the first place. I would appreciate it if you did not say such nonsense again, Yamamoto stated in a very dangerous tone with a single eye opened narrowing at Naruto. Naruto said nothing though. The seat of the 5th division is open, will you take it? No, Naruto answered again, shocking everyone. I have no interest in becoming captain of this useless organization. You serve no purpose. You once created this to protect the souls that wander in Soul Society, but now you have become obsessed with fighting hollows and maintaining your superiority. I have no interest in this nonsense, he said, walking away. Yamamoto was silently seething. But he knew that picking a fight with this man was just provoking destruction. As soon as Central 46 was reformed, he would request that the Soul King reconsider in allowing Naruto to roam free. Even without his Zanpakuto, he was still corrupting the other captains who were not used to seeing this kind of thing. He followed laws because they were absolute. It was his way of life and he would never change. He had survived this long while following the laws. Naruto had been sealed for nearly 1,000 years because he did not follow laws. He could have been killed if it was possible. Between both of them, he was better. Swaifon stood in Naruto's way, glaring daggers at him. Naruto merely stared at her impassively before speaking. You are in the way, child, he said. Who do you think you are? You can't just budge in here and disrespect the Soteiko, insult the way we do things and call the Godai 13 nonsense. It was unacceptable before her eyes for anyone to do that. She did not care what she had heard about him. She just could not stand his lack of respect. Uchiha Naruto, that is who I am, Naruto stated flatly. Now get out of my way, child. Swaifon scoffed, I am not a child. I am the captain of the 2nd Division and chief and commander of the Covered Orps, she said rather loudly. How dare he call her a child? She was not some brat. Now she no longer cared if he was of the same age as Shunsui and Kiraku. He was way beyond line. She felt anger consume her thoughts to her very core. Her very skin began to boil like lava in anger as her ears released illusionary steam. Naruto opened his right palm facing Swaifon. Yamamoto knew Naruto was going to do something that may harm Swaifon. He was not going to have one of his subordinates harmed needlessly. He released a burst of his riot. Naruto. That is enough, his tone was on edge. It was clear he was reaching his limit and should he be pushed further he would explode. Naruto narrowed his eye at Yamamoto before looking back at Swaifon. He disappeared from her front and appeared behind her. The 2nd Division stood frozen. It all happened in the blink of an eye. She did not sense nor see anything. How was that possible? She was really fast, her unit specialized in speed. Naruto was not even facing her when he spoke. Learn your place, child, he said and narrowed his eyes at Yamamoto. I will help in this little party you have failed to stop. With that he disappeared in a buzz sounding like the use of a sonito. Ah, my, he's fast, Urahara commented with a grin on his face hidden behind his hand fan. During his time, there was no one faster than he was. Not even the goddess of Flash can compete with him in speed, Anohana stated, surprising Swaifon. Swaifon Teiko, I would suggest you don't do something like that again before him. You can if you want to be punished, Yamamoto stated in a defeated tone. This is why I felt happy when they sealed him, he mumbled just loud enough for everyone to hear him. You are all dismissed. The captains and former captain all left the room in silence with much to speak about. There once was a man who was as strong as the Soteiko, possibly stronger. Now he has returned and is not afraid to state it loud that he dislikes Soul Society's laws, their laws. For Urahara, the meeting was quite refreshing. He had known that the man was said to be quite cold and ruthless, also never fearing to voice his thoughts, not to the Soteiku, not to Central 46. He had never seen anyone like him before. But seeing all that, he could understand why he was sealed. If he had been powerful enough to defeat the Soteiku and create his own dimension, what more could this man do? An intriguing part was that he could sense a trace of Ryutsu from Naruto. There was nothing coming from him. It was like the man possessed no Ryutsu at all. This of course made him curious. As far as he knew, the man was powerful. If so, he should have been able to sense his power. Could it have something to do with him absorbing Yamamoto's flames? Possibly. Perhaps it was an evolution. Anything was seemingly possible with that man. Another interesting factor is that the Soteiku said nothing about the man's choice of words. No one still with the will to live would have said something like that in front of the captains. Moreover, the captain commander would never allow anyone to say something like that without punishment. But yet Naruto said all things, and called the Godai 13 nonsense. Was it that the Soteiku was not offended by this? A loud no. If the Soul King knew this man would act like this, why unseal him? As Yamamoto had said, the man had no interest in Soul Society matters. Or perhaps he had interest but simply hated the way things were run. He had made that clear. But still, unsealing this man was a major risk. He had no doubt that the whole of Godai 13 combined could tackle Aizen. But he did not know how it would be possible with that man now possessing the Hogyoku. Could it be that the Soul King had no choice but to release him? He had managed to escape from being sealed once, it was possible to do it again. If the Soul King was not forced to release, then why? Could it be that he had other objectives? He had taken precautions when dealing with him. He could say that sending Shutara was to short-fuse him. There were a lot of questions that raced around Urahara's head, and he had no answers to them. He knew that the Soteiku was 1 second away from releasing his Zappankyuto. He had never seen the man holding himself just so he could not release his blade. He knew that there would be collateral damage to the Soteiku releasing his sword, but when has that ever stopped that old man before? If anything, Yamamoto looked reluctant to stop Naruto. Could it be that he feared doing it because he did not know how strong Naruto was? That begged a question. Naruto had his Zappankyuto taken, but Urahara knew it was not the only thing taken away from him. You cannot stop a man like Naruto by taking away his Zappankyuto. That man could win a fight without drawing out his Zappankyuto. He had a feeling that there was much more power that was taken away from him. He assumed even Yamamoto was aware of this. Still, even with the deductions to his power, how strong was he? Yes, he could not be strong as he was back then. But he cannot forget that the man was immortal and the only way to deal with him was sealing him. But as it had been proven before, normal seals just don't work on the man. Sighing, Urahara looked at Shunsui who was talking. Urahara-san, come by at Squad 8 barracks, we will have some sake and catch up with other captains, he said. The former captain nodded with a smile. Later that day, Yukatake, Shunsui, Urahara, Tohiro, and Byakuya were all sighted within Squad 8 barracks. Byakuya had only been present because he was curious about Uchiha Naruto. The senior captains knew about him, they would surely be sharing the information with everyone. That was why he had even bothered to be present. Coming to a gathering like this was not something that a respectable head of the Kukaki clan did. But because he was curious, he came. For Shunsui and Yukatake, since they were good friends, they always got together whenever each of them had time and drank some sake while they conversed. But this was a different occasion. Their friend was back to their lives. Was he always like that? Tohiro asked curiously. Naruto was not subtle when he spoke and seemed to be cold. He was also rude and, for the lack of better word, disrespectful. Yes and no, Yukatake answered. When we met him, he was awfully quiet, but deep inside I think he had always been cold. He was always brutally honest and only called the Soteiku-sensei once. But he was happy when we became friends. He was a good person though, Shunsui added with a small smile. When we were at the academy, he was a lot like me. We both loved women. Naruto knew how to get them. I find that hard to believe, Byakuya stated. It was really hard to believe that such a man they had seen had been a womanizer before. He looked nothing like it. He seemed to be all about business and not taking any nonsense. It not that hard to believe, Yukatake said. Naruto lived much of his life alone. When Genri Usai-sensei took him, he was given a chance to start afresh. To make up for all his loneliness he suffered in the past, he chose to always have a woman beside him, he explained. Before the former captain left the academy, he was always with a girl, always. He never seemed to get tired of them. Was it fear of being lonely again that compelled him to seek out women? Urahara asked, particularly to no one. Might have been, Shunsui said with a shrug. But that all changed when he left the academy. There was little he cared for when he was at the academy. Before he left, he stopped caring about everything, even our friendship, he said rather sadly. But smiled nonetheless as something came into his head. Do you know that he once had an affair with Anohana Teiko? Ha! Urahara grinned. Was it serious? This was definitely gold. He could never have guessed that Anohana would have a physical affair with anyone. No, Yukatake answered, shaking his head. He looked at his friend, Shunsui, as the man took a sip of his sake. Friends? Yes. But it was not serious. Anohana just understood Naruto better than anyone else. If any of you still like to be alive, you won't tell anyone about this, Shunsui said. The man cringed knowing how scary Anohana could be. She was sometimes even scarier than the captain commander. Just how strong was he? Tohiro asked a question that he felt comfortable with. The subject the men were discussing did not suit him at all. Scary strong, Shunsui stated rather seriously. He became captain by showing a fake Bankai while he hid his true Bankai. The only time he would release his Shikai when fighting would be when he was dueling Yamajaji or me and Yukatake. It still was a mystery to him how the man could become that powerful. When he was smiling, he never looked power. He was but a friendly person. That was until his power grew to higher propositions. When his Ryutsu could still be sensed, Hichuga Yutei-ku, you would not be able to stand before him. His spiritual pressure would paralyze you, Yukatake stated looking at the younger captain. The youngest captain in the Godi 13. Looking at the boy, Yukatake knew that in years to come, Tohiro would grow even stronger than he was now. But someone like Naruto would never recognize him as captain until then. When anyone was weaker than him, she would be treated as such. Perhaps the only person who ever respected was Yamamoto. But he along with Anohana and Shunsui were also respected in much aspect. Yamamoto was powerful and was always following orders would be probably why he insults him so much. They got along when Yamamoto was training them, but when Naruto's power grew, he changed. Still Yukatake never faulted the man. On the contrary, he admired him. Naruto stood strong to beliefs, never wavering unlike most people. When something was wrong, he was not afraid to say that it was wrong. He and Shunsui had learned that from him. Even when sometimes Naruto did take things to wider propositions, he never did anything he deemed as wrong. And in his eyes, he was mostly right to challenge Soul Society's laws. Some laws were just unfair and unjust. He could never understand them. Naruto was there always to point that out and refuse to follow them. Well, he could never agree with that Naruto did when he proclaimed himself as the god of Soul Society because the Soul King was not doing a good job. He had to say that even he himself was ashamed of the fact that the Godi 13 did not do enough. Souls were suffering in the Rungoki. But they did nothing about that. Naruto was right, they had become so obsessed with fighting hollows that nothing else matters. It was not that Naruto actually cared for the souls in the Rungoki. He was merely stating a fault in the Godi 13. The souls in the Rungoki actually feared and hated Shinigami. They were not viewed as the protectors they were supposed to be. No, they were the monster, the oppressors. Most Shinigami never went to the Rungoki to investigate crime and other things. They only went there when there was a hollow scene. They had become so one-track minded that anything other than a hollow or a Shinigami was not a threat or just did not matter. That strong huh? Tohiro asked, not knowing what to believe. He did not actually think that anyone would be able to defeat the Soteiku. But the man himself had stated it that he could be defeated by Naruto. If he could not even stand the man's spiritual pressure, how could he fight the man? The Soteiku said his Zappankyu was an element type, fire. How strong were they? Byakuya asked curiously. This was turning out to be better than he had thought. He was getting much more information than first thought. Very strong if they could stand Yamajaji's flames. Naruto himself did say that the flames were not in the true form, or power when his sword was in its Shikai form, Shunsui said. Then again, No one had ever seen his flame's true power since he always hid what he could actually do. They spent hundreds of years with the man, and he never told them anything about his eyes. At first, he had merely stated that he was born like that and that there was nothing special about them. For 100 years they believed that. No one even suspected anything about his eyes. He was indeed good at keeping secrets. Not even Yamamoto knew that the Bankai he had used to gain entrance to the Godai 13 was not actually his Bankai but just another ability of his eyes. This of course, never made it easy to deal with him because you never knew what to expect with the man. You always had to be cautious, on guard because if you did not, you would be dead in the blink on an eye. He always ended fights easy so not to show much of his abilities. The ability he never hid was that he was faster than anyone. But Yamamoto could actually go toe-on-toe with him in speed, that is unless he pulls another card to increase his speed. What color were they? Black, pure black, Shunsui replied as he took another sip of his sake. He sighed as his sip consumed everything. Well, at least there was still another bottle. It would have been a horror of a night had there been no more sake. Was there anything more special about him? Urahara asked curiously. In all honesty, he was curious. The books he was able to get his hands on never did show much, just a few important facts. But he himself had to go and see them man himself. He wanted to confirm something. His Rengyoka was special. He never elaborated how and he could manipulate Reishi like Quincy. But his manipulation was far superior. This ability is what led Yamajiji to believe that he had Quincy powers, Shunsui answered with a shrug. Like everything about his power, he never told anyone how that came to be. But everything else went back to his eyes. The problem was that he never confirmed nor denied anything. Urahara nodded. It was quite interesting, intriguing for someone like him who was a scientist. He always wanted to solve mysteries. This was one he would solve one way or the other. Back then he never bothered because the man was sealed, but right now, he was back to the living. This made it easy for him to do a research. He could just go and ask the man about his eyes, but there was a 0% chance that he would get an answer. So he had Quincy, Shinigami and Hollow powers, plus his special eyes, Urahara stated with a thoughtful look on his face. If you could have all three powers, there was no way you could not be strong. No wonder the man called himself God. Yes, but for some reason he never used his Quincy powers like the Quincy's used to do. Yamajiji theorized that it was just that he could not even though he could manipulate Reishi. He used his manipulation of spirit particles for other purposes, no one was fully able to tell what. He sure had secrets, Tuhiro said. It makes you wonder why he would hide it. I mean most strong beings never actually hide their power. Some show it off in sheer arrogance, some because they believe that no one could really do anything even if they were aware. It is indeed curious, Byakuya stated with a nod agreeing to Captain Hitsugaya's words. The only person in Soul Society who knows more about him than anyone is Anohana Teiko. So that means other than her, nobody knows much about him. Shunsui shook his head. Not at all. Anohana just knows him at a more personal level, so do I but not as Anohana, he said. When Naruto was still happy they were friends, good friends. Naruto was the one he went to women hunting with. Yukatake was not into that sort of thing. Two things that will never change about him is that, he will always be against Soul Society laws, and he will never bow to anyone, Yukatake added. Can he be trusted then? He was sealed for nearly 1,000 years after a failed attempt to kill him. Won't he seek revenge? Tuhiro questioned in a slight serious tone. Anyone could think as he was, even Byakuya seemed to agree with him. Yukatake and Shunsui merely shared a look and chuckled slightly. Naruto does not hold grudges. He does not do revenge. But his dislike of the Soul King has obviously reached new bounds that was not good at all. But the Soul King must have known about this. Otherwise he would never have released him. If Naruto does get his Zappankyu back, there surely will be fireworks in the royal palace. And the Soteiku? He was sent to deal with him once, would not he be angry with him? You are saying that because so far he has been constantly insulting him, the questioner nodded. No. The only reason he would dislike Yamajiji is because he always follows Soul Society's laws even when they are unfair. He once said to Yamajiji, Shinjuku, you are a woman, a wife to Soul Society. A wife does what the husband says, as long as it pleases him. If your husband, Soul Society, tells you he is going to bring his friend for a threesome, you will simply open your legs wide, and say, as long as it pleases my husband. If your husband tells you to go prostitute yourself because he is broke, you will run along to do that. As long as it pleases the husband. Do not expect me to be a whore for Soul Society because you are one. There was some silence before all four captains burst out manner. Well, Byakuya seemed to be laughing also, albeit in a dignified manner. They all then turned completely serious. You are joking, right? No, Shunsui said seriously. Did he actually say it? Yes, we were there when he said it. I had never seen Genri Usai-sensei so infuriated before that day. Once Naruto opened his mouth, the Soteiko started unconsciously releasing his Ryutsu to higher proportions. And released his Shikai. But Naruto did not stop. He would have been possibly killed if he had not gone away while the Soteiko was still frozen in anger, Yukatake said. We also had to run away. We only heard a large explosion that almost shook Siridi, but never looked back. How was he able to stand before the Soteiko after that? He said it when he was quitting the Godei 13. From then he disappeared for years. Since then, whenever they would meet, Naruto would always insult Yamajiji. That is why now he is used to it. The captains then continued to drink their sake in comfortable silence. They were digesting what had been said so far in the meeting. Uchiha Naruto was one mysterious former captain. His dislike of Soul Society would explain why he refused to take the position of captain. He had quit it because he disagreed with the way things were done. Nothing had changed so far, so there was no reason for him to return to the fold again. He is similar to Aizen in some ways, Kukaki Byakuya stated. Both desire to become God. While Aizen surely is powerful hungry, he does make it up for by his intellectual capacity. Not to forget that he has hollows by his side. Hichuga Yuteico nodded. That bastard is crazy though. He cannot take on the whole of Soul Society even with the hollows by him, he said bitterly. It was obvious that the young captain had anger issues with Aizen that needed to be resolved. The only way to solve them, though, was to give Aizen the young captain so he could murder him. They may have the same goal. But Naruto was and is not power hungry. And you could say that he actually succeeded in becoming God. He did have his own dimension with spirit particles that are so dense and potent, making it harder even for a captain to breathe unless they are used to the place, Shunsui stated. He also did say that he had control over life and death. But no one was ever able to confirm it. Even though I find it hard to believe, I know Naruto would never say it unless it was true. Life and death. Urahara questioned curiously. Is that even possibly? That is beyond what a Shinigami can do. Or anyone for that matter. Perhaps he may have never said things just for the sake. However, control over life and death is impossible. No one has that kind of power. If he had it, would not he use it? Prove it to you. There was clear disbelief in Byakuya's voice. No one could believe that someone could have control over life and death. If one believed that tale, then something was wrong with them. If Shunsui had said that the Spirit King had that kind of power, then it would have been believable because he was the Soul King, the most powerful being. It seems impossible, even I cannot believe it, unless I see it, Chihiro added. Urahara was in thought. Shunsui was right, a man like Naruto never said he could do something unless he could. This begged a question, if he had the ability, why did he not prove it? Was it simply because he did not want to or could not? The former did not seem likely, the latter could be likely. He could theorize it as having a powerful attack, without the required power or Ryutsu for the attack, it becomes impossible to do it. Could it be the same for Naruto? Could it be that there were some drawbacks that followed using the kind of power? He certainly had a lot more questions that needed answers. He could not get them all on his own. But the man who had the answers, according to Shunsui and Yukatake, would never give them the answers given his secretive nature. Still, this only gave him a job to do. He did always like doing research. What kind of a scientist would he be if he did not love doing research? It is still a surprise to me why he would be released in the first place. We know he cannot be killed, not even the Soul King can do it. But why release him knowing that he would still have the same mindset that had him sealed in the first place? Byakuya questioned a more interesting question that each captain and former question had asked themselves. I have also asked myself that question, but I have not found an answer, Yukatake stated with a tired sigh. I know that he would never change, and he will always be against Soul Society's laws unless he chooses not simply not care about them. That woman who unsealed him, gave him something after he had threatened to go against Soul Society. Do you think that the Soul King promised him something? Hero questioned, looking at the senior captains. They were the ones with more knowledge than him about the matter. Before either of the senior captains responded, Urahara spoke. Before we even assume that, we must first think of what could have been written in that note. Was it a threat, a promise? It could be either. And the only ones who know are Naruto-san himself and the Soul King, he stated calmly. Urahara-san is right, we don't know what was written in that note. However, we do know that whatever it was, Naruto stopped from doing anything, Shunsui stated. Are you going to ask him what was written in the note? Urahara asked with a smile. No, both Shunsui and Yukatake answered in unison. The following day, secret lab under Squad 5 barracks. Naruto sat comfortably on a chair he knew he did not put inside his lab. As soon as he entered, he knew that someone had been using his lab. He had constructed it during his time as captain. He used it for his researches and some other things. There are only 2 people who know of its existence. But given that there were some new equipment inside the lab, he could guess that someone had found its existence. He had hid it pretty well. And also placed some barriers around the entrance. Unless someone was very perceptive, they would never find the entrance. But even so, with the entrance found, there was a task of breaking the barriers he had set up. That someone who could break his barriers had to be strong. But the barriers had to have weakened over time. It had been over 1,000 years since he set it up. The new equipment that were inside the lab were cameras for monitoring Siridi. He of course had set up the surveillance cameras under the 12 division nose. He had done it when he was bored. Life had become quite boring after some time. To help with the boredom, he had settled for setting those cameras. It also helped him know everything that went around Soul Society. The fact that the cameras had been replaced with new ones meant that the person was able to locate each camera he had set up. Well, it did not matter anyway. He just hated it when someone used his property though. If he wanted someone to use it, he would never have bothered setting up the security to hide and protect it from someone else. But then again, if someone had managed to break his barriers, then that person was at least worthy of using his lab. He never did keep anything important in the lab. It was mainly used for observing Soul Society and some research. But the results would be taken back to his house for storage. He had done well to ensure that only he could open the safe he could all his research data. That was before he had his own dimension. Most things were in the place. He only left things he would need to use. He was no scientist, but he could collect data and do some research. The previous age did not have brilliant minds. But this age ought to have someone. He needed some theories to be proved by a real scientist. I thought I would find you here, a voice stated from behind. Naruto turned around along with his chair. He locked eyes with Anohana. The woman wore her brilliant smile. It unnerves me when you look at me like that, he said, referring to the concentrated look Anohana was giving him. Anohana walked calmly and sat on a chair beside him. She turned to face Naruto. She gave him a slight serious look. Can I assume that it is this Aizen who was using my lab? He asked, looking straight at the woman. I would assume so too. I never came here since you left. He was smart and cunning, he could have found it, Anohana replied, keeping her slight serious look. Say it, Naruto said, seeing the serious look. He knew she had something in her mind. I am curious, she said, looking at him intensively. Unlike every other Shinigami, you created your own Zanpakuto. If I remember correctly, your Zanpakuto was half of your soul. Without it close to you, there would be no balance in your soul, it would possibly collapse. This is what made your Zanpakuto special. You are only complete in your Bankai. But separation from Amaterasu puts our life at risk. Naruto merely smiled at the woman before him. You are mortal now, she realized now after saying her words. No, Naruto said, surprising her. You assume that without half of my spirit I would lose my immortality, he smiled. That thing seems to knows what Zanpakuto means to me and what I am without it. Anohana nodded. I see, she said calmly. So that note. Yes, Naruto confirmed what Retsu had in mind. Is it the only way to kill you? Anohana asked curiously. Naruto had said that there was a way one could kill him, but he never told her. If the Soul King had planned to kill him this way, then it must be the only way to kill him. She was curious though, how the Soul King found out how Naruto came to possess his sword. He had only told her, not even Shudera knew about it. No, Naruto answered. With that thing had in mind, I should be dying in the 1 or 2 years. 2 years at most. Anohana frowned slightly, but it quickly disappeared when she realized that Naruto was not even the slightest worried by it. Are you going to tell me? I am still immortal, but the Soul King does not know that, he said. However, it is true that separation from my Zanpakuto is not good for my health and result in my death, but it does not make me mortal. I am still immortal, but I can still die. My immortality is what is keeping me alive right now. So the Soul King only released you because he found a way to kill you, Anohana said. Now she was not even the slightest saddened by the realizing that had dawned on her. Smart move on his part, hey. It seems well thought. I was wondering why you would be released after being sealed. She now had answers as to why he was released. He was released so he could die. What do you plan on doing, now? What do you mean? Naruto asked with a raised brow. Knowing you, you are not just going to sit around till you die. You are going to fight until you find a way to survive, Anohana stated with clear conviction in her voice. You know me better, Naruto said, his expression becoming impassive, losing the smile he had. Soon I will lose my evolution, then my spiritual pressure will become lowered for everyone to feel it. When that happens, know that, I am losing power and my death is drawing near. That is risky, Anohana stated, knowing that after that happens, he will start to put plans in motion to keep himself alive. I cannot do anything in this evolved state, my soul cannot be restored. But when I lose my evolution, I can find means to restore my soul. Then Amaterasu will be just an extension on my soul. She will be no different from any other Shinigami's blade, Naruto explained to Anohana with a blank tone. Anohana's eyes widened slightly. Could it be? That would mean that if his sword was no longer half of his soul, he would become even stronger. It would also eliminate this way of killing him. Could it be? She eyed him suspiciously. I know that you allowed yourself to be sealed. If not, the Royal Guard would have never entered your dimension. I always thought that it was because you were bored and lonely. But now, she trailed off as Naruto stood up. This is why I like you, he said. You should not lie, Uchiha Teiko, Anohana said in a dangerous tone. We both know that the only person who managed to penetrate that cold heart of yours is Shudera. True, the only person I cared for was Shudera. But I liked you, just not enough to care, Naruto said, drawing closer to Anohana. But you have never betrayed my trust. You also care for me, why should not I return the favor, Yachiroa? What are you getting at? You and Shudera are the only souls I care for, he said, placing his hand under her chin. I liked your old hairstyle better, he said, then kissed her on the forehead. I did not think you had the heart to do that, Anohana stated, referring at him saying he cared. Naruto merely smiled. I will be gone for a few days, he said, leaving Anohana alone. As soon as Naruto opened the door to exit the lab, he found someone standing there. I was wondering when you would come back. Naruto walked into Squad 1 barracks with a calm look on his face. He had been called into the place by Yamamoto. He wanted to see what the old fool wanted to discuss with him. It had to be important though. If not, he would walk away while the old man was still talking. He never did like listening to the old man when he started talking. It was all about soul society this and society that. He disliked hearing it. The man never stopped preaching soul society. If there was an award, he would surely fill a cabinet with them given to him by the Soul Society for his outstanding work. Yamamoto was standing beside his lieutenant. The lieutenant held a captain's Haori on his right hand. Naruto raised a brow seeing this. It was certainly held for him. The Soteiko wanted him to wear that thing again. But he had already told him that he would not be captain again. What more did the old man want with him? I have already told you, Yamamoto, I have no interest in wearing the useless thing again, Naruto stated as he drew closer to the Soteiko. Yes, you have, Yamamoto said with a firm tone, and a nod to emphasize that Naruto had indeed said he was not becoming a captain again. By the look the man had on his face, Naruto knew that there was something going on. He was not going to wait for it to happen. What is? He never got to finish as Yamamoto drew out his Zanpakuto without even calling out its name. In a second, he was already in front of Naruto swinging Ryujin Jaka across his torso. Naruto was quick to react. He quickly blurred away from the captain commander's reach and appeared a few distance away. He was not cut by the blade nor did it even touch him. If Yamamoto wanted to cut him, he would have had to do better than that. But he was sure that the man was aware of the fact that something like that would not cut him nor even touch him. Yamamoto did not look like he was going to attack again. He sealed his blade and went back to stand beside his second-in-command. He eyed Naruto dangerously. "You are weak," he said in clear belief in his words. It was apparent with the look of his face and the tone of his voice. "Do you really believe so?" Naruto asked with narrowed eyes and a blank look on his face. This was most interesting. He had not calculated Yamamoto to play a dangerous game like this. But he should have expected it. The man always did try all his best to get him under his thumb. He never did understand that he, Naruto, was beyond his control. Long ago, you would not have dodged that attack. You would have simply caught my blade or blocked it. This time you ran away from my blade, the Soteiko stated without a shred of doubt in his words. Are you saying that I dodged because an attack like that could have cut me? An interesting theory there by the man. But that attack could not have cut him. Yamamoto had to have known that. And he was proved right when the man responded to his question. Yamamoto shook his head slightly. You are being cautious. During your days, you never dodged anything like that, even if it was a weak attack. You always took an attack head-on, that was certainly the truth. The man never dodged any attack. When attacked by a stronger technique, he either took it head-on or used his own technique to cancel the attack out. He even went as far as to catch his own blade, Ryujinjaka. No one had ever done that. But never has he attempted to dodge an attack. What if I am simply changing my fighting style? No, the Soteiko stated in a firm tone. You are a mere shell. You no longer have that power you once had, power that even frightened me. All I need to do is to use my full power and you will crumble. Naruto smiled, not even the slightest worried. Yamamoto was always bold to make statements like that. It was no surprise to him when he did. Are you positive about that? Yamamoto took the captain's Haori and threw it at the blonde. You will take the position of 5th squad captain. And you will no longer speak nonsense in front of me and other captains, is that clear? No, Naruto gave a firm answer. He had already refused. He was not going to do circles. But given his state, he could do away with things that could put his transition at risk. So he responded, if you want me to wear this thing again, you will have to make me. Yamamoto narrowed his eyes at Naruto. The blonde was not backing down. He had thought he would after what he had said so far, but it appears that he was wrong. It was of no bother though. He was interested in seeing how strong Naruto had become now. He had lost much of his power. That much was obvious. Fine then, the Soteiko said as he drew his Zanpakuto. If a beating is what it takes to install some sense in that stubborn head of yours, then I will give you a beating. Naruto merely smiled, it was by no means a happy smile. Without another word to Yamamoto, he disappeared. He knew Yamamoto would follow his steps. Drawing a fight at a place like this with the old man would also cause much commotion, he was not going to have to deal with that sort of thing. Watchers would certainly come around to see who was foolish enough to provoke the anger of the man hailed as the strongest Shinigami in the Soul Society. It surely had to be a rare sight to see Yamamoto fight. You still have your speed, Yamamoto commented as he appeared before Naruto. He had not wasted time in following the blonde. He was determined to give the blonde a beating. He narrowed his eyes around, they were at a secluded place a bit far away from other people. Let us see what you can do, Shinjakuni, Naruto stated as he held out his right hand. Black flames formed on his right hand and started to swirl around for some time. His eyes flashed bright red for a moment before the flames disappeared leaving a silk black blade. The sword was black from its tip to the handle. It did not look anything special. Flames burst out around Yamamoto and surrounded the two. The Soteiko's spiritual pressure began to rise up to higher levels. Some people back in Siridi could feel it. This feeling had them questioning as to what could have the Soteiko raise his power level. But some were smart enough to stay away. But Naruto remained calm as he watched the flames. Yamamoto undid his cloth from his shoulders, allowing Naruto to see his masculine chest and many battle scars. That is not a good sight to see, Naruto said, commenting on the scars around the old man's upper body. He could never allow scars like that to suffice on his body. Yamamoto ignored the words and gripped his blade tightly. Are you ready for a beating? He did not wait for Naruto to answer, he simply disappeared in a burst of speed. The fact that Naruto was not being burned or did not seem concerned with his flames did not surprise him. He was used to the sight. He appeared in front of Naruto, swinging his Zanpakuto from up to downwards attempting a vertical slash across Naruto's chest. The blonde raised his blade and held it in a horizontal position. The swords clashed in midair and created a sound shockwave. Naruto remained rooted on his spot. The power behind Yamamoto's swing caused chunks of earth to be lifted behind him. His feet also burrowed to the ground slightly. Again, Yamamoto swung his blade towards Naruto. But the blonde ducked under the swing instead of parrying it like he would have done. As Yamamoto's blade passed him, he rose up again to face another assault from the Soteiko. This time he parried the attack. He was not surprised by the strength behind Yamamoto's strike. It was most strength than any other Shinigami could master. He was still powerful physically despite being of old age. He had expected such a thing from the old man. Age really did not matter for a man like him. Yamamoto retrieved his blade and swung it towards Naruto's neck. Had it not been for the block, it would have cut off the blonde's head. The blonde simply raised his blade and blocked the swing. Again, the clash of the swords caused some debris to pick up on Naruto's side. While his sword was still clashing with the Soteiko's, the blonde quickly raised his right hand, opening its palm facing Yamamoto. "Zero," the blonde uttered as he shot a black beam of energy directly at Yamamoto's face. The captain commander hurriedly made to escape from the path of the technique. It was not enough to injure him, but dealing with Naruto, one could never know. Yamamoto appeared a few feet away from Naruto. He had no injury, despite receiving a hit from the Zero Naruto shot at him. He noticed that the former self-proclaimed god of Soul Society had not moved at all. His feet were at the same place they had been since he started attacking. That was a surprise. "Your swings are still strong," Naruto said in a calm tone. "I have seen all that I wanted to see. You have not grown weaker over the years." This was not so much of a good thing for him. Well, it had its advantages. But the disadvantages outweighed the advantages, hence it was not a good thing for him. He looked at his blade as it shattered into pieces. Paying no mind to it, he folded his hands across his chest. He would have to play safe. "You win, I will take the post again." With that, Naruto was gone. Yamamoto sighed. He should have expected that the only reason Naruto would even agree to this was because he wanted to see if his strength had toned down. Well, he did get his answer. But he was certain that Naruto seemed reluctant to fight. He did not even try to swing his blade towards him. He only remained rooted in one sport. He knew it was not because of fear of him. That bastard never feared anything or anyone. It made him curious though, why was he reluctant? His swings were by no means toned down, and the blonde still took it all, without even moving. What was certain was that he no longer had the power he used to have. But why was he reluctant? Naruto's house. "Takemi," a soft voice spoke within his head. "Amaterasu." Finally, the spirit said, releasing a tired sigh. "I have been trying to talk to you for a long time now. You do know that it has to be difficult. You are in another dimension after all," the blonde responded as he sat down on a couch within his house. "Yes, I am aware of that, but our bond is stronger than that. Distance cannot come between us, it cannot be a barrier. Only death can succeed in that. But we cannot die. So our bond is eternal. I formed you that way," Takemi said. But still, he could only hear the voice. There was no physical appearance of Amaterasu. Well, she was still locked up in the Soul King's dimension. The distance could not allow her to manifest physically. "Has it started already?" "Yes, I can feel your other half leaving me." She paused for a moment. "Are you certain that the fragments of your soul will not scatter around in this dimension?" "Positive," the blonde answered. What he had told Anohana was the truth, but only half-truth. He had indeed created Amaterasu from half of his soul. But over the years, his other half gave birth to a spirit which became the spirit sword. His other half merged with the sword spirit and became one. This made it impossible for him to retrieve his other half. But even so, Naruto still called her Amaterasu. When he released his Bankai, his soul returned to him, temporarily. He could not keep it from leaving his body again as it was attached to Amaterasu. Over the years, before he was sealed, he had attempted to get his other half back, but he never found a way. Well, until then, before he was sealed. With his other half always within his blade, he could never reach his full power. Added to the fact that a small part of his soul was already missing, it was sealed. This half-small part had no consequence to his health. Nevertheless, it restricted his power from crossing a certain barrier. But he had found a way to restore everything, so to reach his full potential. That was why he was here. How long do you think it will take for your other half to separate from me? I do not know, but be patient. I have already activated that portal. Once my other completely separates from you, it will search for me. The portal will keep calling for it. Once it finds it, it will return to me. Not so long after that I will come and get you. Fine, and then her voice became silent. Naruto was not worried though. She was patient, she could wait for some time until he regains his power. He knew that since he was now awake, she too was awake. This meant that she was lonely in the other side of the world. But for his plans to become fruitful, it had to be like this. Amaterasu knew him better than anyone, despite residing within the blade, not inside an inner world like others Zanpakuto spirits. She was a part of him after all, and only he could speak to her, and wield her. It was not in his plans to take the captain's Haori again, but he knew that Yamamoto was not going to take no for an answer. The old man would have surely fought him until there was no breath in his body. He was not going to have that. It would not have been good for his health if he had continued fighting. He had to lose his evolution gradually. If it were to just disappear at once, his body would not be been able to handle it. This would be a hazard for his health. At this stage, unnecessary risks had to be removed. The situation was delicate and needed to be handled with care. Things were progressing well for him though. No matter what he finds himself doing, he will always have time to further his plans. He just had to make sure that nothing else slowed him down. Being captain will not slow anything down. It would only give Yamamoto the illusion that he was in charge of everything. Amaterasu would bother him much if anything slowed down her retrieval. The woman could be noisy sometimes. But it was nothing he could not handle. You are back already, Shudera said as she walked towards the blonde. She took a seat close to him and stared straight at his eyes. What is it? Yesterday, you said you had been expecting me to return, but never explained, she said. She was curious as to how he would know that she would return to him. He had not said anything more to her. You, Shudera, are the only person who keeps me from doing anything dangerous, per that, thing's belief. But that is not the truth. And he was just being generous because of the plans he has for me, Naruto explained calmly. Certainly, since the Soul King planned for him to die, he had decided to give him a dying wish. The woman had been the only person he ever loved wholeheartedly. The thing called a king was aware of it. Shudera would also keep him busy, push him away from any form of evil thoughts, again as per the Soul King's belief. But things were not as that thing believed. It was true that she was the only woman he ever loved, but she had no control over him. Sometimes she could be forceful in a scary way, but when situations were serious, he always emerged on top. She was his woman and did not have a final say in his actions. He has never even for once asked for her opinion when he wanted to do certain things. He had never argued with her when she wanted to leave him for the new job she was offered. He wanted her to be happy and make her own decisions, but now, he would not allow her to leave again. Generous. You see, Shudera, as it is now, I am dying, Naruto revealed, earning a wide-eyed look from Shudera. She stared at him for some time, seemingly frozen. A life without Naruto? She could not imagine it. The last years had not been easy for her without him, but that was soothed by the fact that he had been still alive. He was only sealed, and she could always speak to him. She had always known that someday he would be released. The thought kept her sane and able to continue with her life. But the idea of him dying? No, never crossed her mind, and she never thought it would be possible. She had always thought he would live for all eternity. She never thought he would someday die. Perhaps he was just joking. No, Naruto would never joke about something like that. By the look on his face, it was indeed true. You are dying? How? Why? She seemed to have gotten over her shocked stupor. Her eyes still bore straight into Naruto's as she questioned. She wanted to know and understand the situation. Last time they had been told they were going to seal him, not kill me. One might not be able to see the difference in having him sealed and killed. But she could see the difference. With him being sealed, she knew that he could always be released and walk amongst them, or he could escape, since nothing ever seemed to tie him down. Death was another story. If he died, he could not return back to life, and she would be responsible for that. That is another story for another time, Naruto said calmly. He was not going to explain it to her. It was best she was kept in the dark about this for the time being. He could not have following him everywhere to ensure that he was fine. And this matter was best kept away from her. But have no fears, only that fool of a king believes that I will die. But he should know better. Shudera nodded and released a sigh of relief. I thought I had lost you there for a second, she said. She was very relieved. Although she got the feeling that Naruto was not going to answer her question, she was still pleased that he was with her. She was not worried about being given false hope. Naruto would never do that to her. If he was dying, he would tell her that he was going to die and there was nothing he or she could do about it. That was how he handled their relationship. But she was also aware that he does not tell her everything. What did Yamamoto want with you? He was offering me that captain's Haori by force. I refused and we clashed swords a few times before I chose to agree, Naruto replied. He had left the damn thing. He would have to return to the Soteiko to take it. Amusing that he who stood above all beings was going to be wearing something he deserted long ago. Being a captain of the Godai 13 was below the god of soul society. But for the time being, he would endure all. Still, he had never thought he would wear the captain's Haori again, but the situation forced him to do it. For greater glory ahead, he would endure. So you are taking your old division again, Shudera said as she crawled towards Naruto's chest. She rested her back on his chest. It was cold and gave her no comfort. It was never like that before. Every time she rested like this, he always released warmth that was only reserved for her. But it was now not there. She could not feel it. It was just cold, giving away nothing. Still, she refused to dwell on it. As long as he was here, things should be interesting from now on. Certainly, Naruto agreed. You know, when you walked out on me, I thought you were mad at me. I thought you no longer wished for me to be by your side. Woman, that was not good, Shudera thought. Whenever Naruto called her like that, he was going to tell her how much disappointed he was. How can you say things like that? You thought I no longer wanted you by my side? You are the one who left me so that you could babysit the sleep-obsessed fool. I did not tell you to go, you left. I made no complaints. Even if I no longer wanted you by my side, you should not make complaints since I also did not make any complaints. The cold and hollow feeling she felt from his chest was transferred into his tone. Yes, things have changed. He never used a tone like that to her. Even though she had done something unpleasant, he always talked to her with love and care. He never gave off a hollow feeling towards her. Perhaps other people, but not her. I get that I was wrong to leave you. But I wanted the job and you were also offered the same position, I thought you would take it too. Me, bodyguarding that thing? Never. You should have known better. No one forced you to take the post even when I was not going. You did it on your own will, Naruto stated in a stern tone. I know. And I will always regret leaving in the first place. But once I took the job, there was no turning back. I had sworn with my life that I would protect the Soul King until my body could no longer allow me to. She spoke with determination in her last part. Despite all, she could take back her words after she had sworn to protect the royal family. She could not go against that, despite her feelings. For the only woman who was rumored to be the only one I cared for, you don't act as one. Perhaps I was too kind to you, Naruto said. Too kind, she feared what he would do if he was no longer going to be too kind to her. She had seen how he treated other people. She did not want to fall victim to that. Yes, had it not been it, you would have never left my side to join him, Naruto stated. Shudera knew this was one conversation she was not going to win. She had a fair victory sometimes, but when it came to things like this, Naruto always won. Perhaps it was because she sometimes strayed away from him. But he was always there for her. But even so, now she believed it, things were different. Naruto was not the same as he was back then, perhaps towards her only. I am SOR, Naruto cut her off. Shudera, if you ever do something like that again, I will kill you. I love and care for you, but should you decide to betray me, I will kill you. Really, she dared him. He had never been able to lay a finger on her even when she left him to join the Soul King. The very being he despised with all his being. All the time she has known him, he has never spoken anything good about the Soul King. His dislike of the Spirit King was somewhat legendary. He never hid the fact to anyone, not even Central 46. At the beginning of their relationship, she was got used to Naruto's cold ways. And at those days, she was still young and quite a playful woman. She was not used to a cold person waking up next to her. At the beginning he offered her little comfort. Yes, she knew he loved her and he tried to give her comfort. It was little comfort. But she knew that no one had ever received even a piece of the comfort he gave her. But it was not enough for her. She had ended up leaving him without saying a word. When he found her, a man was flirting with her. He was a bit overdoing it. Naruto never freaked or seemed angry at what he had seen. But the thing was that he murdered the man and left her alone. When she went back home, he told her he would kill her if she did something like that again. He had always threatened to kill her. But never had he shouted or hit her. Whenever he was furious with her, he never allowed his anger to direct his actions when it concerned her. He had made it clear to her that she was his and he would not share her with anyone. Anyone who attempted to drink where he drank would be killed, that was the law. But after the incident, he showed her more love than he previously. He held her with warm hands. He cared for her more than he had been. That was the turning point of their relationship. From there, he was never cold towards her. He was always kind and loving. Perhaps it was because he had been afraid that she would leave him. If she had done that, someone would have surely been killed brutally. It would surely hurt me to kill you, but I can erase the pain from my heart, Naruto explained. People don't turn emotions on and off like that, Shudera said, shaking her head. But then again, this was Naruto. Maybe he could do it. You have also not been fair to me. Explain. You trust Anohana more than you trust me, your love, that was the truth. She would be surprised if he even denied that. What makes you say that? Naruto asked with a blank look across his face. He was not worried by her question, not even the slightest. But he had not made it obvious that he trusted Anohana more than he trusted her, did he? She knows more about you than I do and I know that you share things with her. It did not please her at all. She was his lover. He was supposed to share things with her, not Anohana. He only used her for casual sex. True, Naruto knew Anohana before her met her. But she was his woman, not Anohana. What more do you want, woman? You have my love, and I trust you. Perhaps not in the same level as Anohana, but you have what is most important. If you are not satisfied with that, show me that I can depend on you. The following day, Karankara town. A garganta opened within the skies of the town as Naruto came out of it. His rebirth had left him one-sided. He could not utilize most of Shinigami powers and the power of his eyes. The only useful thing that was left in his arsenal was Flash Step. His hollow powers had been left untouched. This meant that for now he was stuck using hollow powers. It was not that bad. But given his current state, he could not use his most powerful techniques. He did love throwing them around like they were nothing. It would be disappointing that he could not light up some fireworks. It was only temporary though. It has been long since I came into this place, Naruto thought, looking around at the town. Since no one could sense him, his appearance would not cause any commotion. He was also not going to lower his power for someone to feel it. He had been supplied with the location of whom he wanted. There was not for him to attract whom he wanted that way. Soul Society had banned you from coming into this place, Amaterasu stated within Naruto's head. It has been over 1,000 years since they did that. Your spiritual pleasure was not good for the humans. It was hard to sense a seal placed on you to limit your power would break within seconds. That was before Naruto left the Godai 13. But after he left them, he never did bother coming here as there was nothing useful. You are here? Naruto asked, surprised to hear his blade. I told you, there is nowhere you can go where my voice cannot reach you. I might not be able to manifest physically, but because originally I was a part of you, my voice will always reach you. I am aware of that, Naruto said. He was the one who created her in the first place. It is not like you to speak to me this often. You spoke to me yesterday, this morning, and now. Takemi, you have not been able to hear my voice for nearly 1,000 years, and when I try to make up for lost time you say something like that. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the words. You are bitter about our separation. Of course I am. It feels like you have abandoned me. It is not as if I will have any good fights without you. And besides, it won't take years for me to come and get you. It better not. I sense a threat, Amaterasu. You should not have thoughts like that. Perhaps the fact that my soul is separating from you is making you think that like that. My personality will no longer affect you. Perhaps. Naruto sighed and looked down at the humans going about their business completely unaware of his presence. Soon, they would be able to feel his presence. His condition was deteriorating faster than first thought. He had not thought that it would worsen at this rate. But it was no bother, all worked out better for him. "Nah, Takemi," Amaterasu started. "You have been down twice now. First it was from grace 1,000 years ago, now it is from your glory. My fall from grace, it was ages ago, mere memories now. But because of it, you understand why I must do this. Yes, they must pay for what they did. Your actual rebirth should awaken the sleeping power that has been sealed shortly before your fall from grace. Be patient, wait for me. I will reclaim that which has been lost and we will sit with the stars as we watch over the world. Heaven was made for us to rule. It is only a matter of time now. I will wait. Just don't take too long. Heaven is waiting for us, and the stars are already bored without their master." She paused for a moment. "Well, that is what you told me anyway. What is that supposed to mean? You are a liar, Takemi. You have lied to everyone. This may be your true self to some extent, but you said things in the past to manipulate future events. Those Shinigami think you always told the truth. But you always had a reason for saying what said to those people. No one knows where you come from or your true age, except for him." Naruto smiled as Amaterasu's voice disappeared. "I guess I better go find the scientist," he thought before disappearing from sight. Urahara's shop. Naruto appeared in front of the shop he had been told to visit. The location of whom he wanted was this place. Outside it looked like a normal shop. Who could have guessed that a former captain of the hollow-obsessed Godi I-13 lived here? He saw a boy and a girl sweeping. That was at first, but the boy then seemed to be bullying the girl. He walked towards the two children who had not noticed his presence. "Children," he called. "Where is Urahara?" The young girl seemed timid. The boy gave him a stare. That was after they had been startled by his sudden appearance. "Who are you?" the boy asked, no rather demanded. "Ano, I think he is a captain," the girl said, pointing at the haori Naruto was wearing. It was like any other captain's haori, but his was added a few customs. He had removed the sleeves and added high collars. There were black stars dazzling along the hemline. Naruto whizzed past the children in a blur and entered the shop. They were left blinking as he disappeared. As soon as he entered the shop, a large man was greeting him. "You are not the one I am looking for," Naruto stated. "Where is Urahara?" Tessai sized up Naruto for a moment. Certainly, it was him. "The owner is currently busy right now. I can go and inform him of your presence." "Take me to him," Naruto stated. It was not a request and Tessai was smart enough to realize that. "Please follow me," he said, turning around. He led Naruto towards the underground entrance, but did not go in. He told the blonde to go down and he would find Urahara Kisuke. As soon as he arrived, Naruto realized that he was in a secret training ground. Whoever created this place was quite crafty. The space looked eternal, and one could do all the damage she wanted. But someone like him could destroy it within seconds. Well, that is during his days. Now he no longer had that power. It was sad really. Getsuga Tensho, he was snapped out of his thoughts when he heard the voice and was soon followed by a dark energy coming towards him. Without worries, he brought out his right hand and deflected the technique with his bare hand. The action seemed to notify the occupants of the training ground of his presence. Naruto locked eyes with the orange-haired teen. He looked at the boy calmly. The boy seemed surprised, no shocked that he had deflected his technique. Naruto also sensed to other people around him, but he paid them no mind. "Can you hit me with that technique again?" It seemed to be an interesting technique. He wanted to analyze it. The boy seemed unsure of what to do. He looked confused. "Who are you?" he asked finally. It seemed to be the smartest question to ask. "Sing, Benihime." Naruto narrowed his eyes without turning his head. He saw a red beam traveling through the ground towards him, fast. But his eyes could see everything. Like he did with Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho, he deflected the technique with his right hand. Naruto took a few steps towards the orange-haired boy. "You have an interesting child, Urahara," he said now having seen the man. He did not know the man personally, but he spoke like was familiar with him. "You think so?" Urahara asked as he became visible with Urayuki by his side. "Yes," Naruto responded as he stopped in front of Ichigo. He was sensing some impressive ryotsu from the child. This was the human he had been told of by Anohana, definitely an interesting human. He had also seen some videos in his lab of the boy. They were just battles of him at Soul Society. But for a human it was something. However, it was not enough to make him follow the child's movements. "Attack me," Naruto stated, looking straight at Ichigo. He wanted to see what the child could do. Taking things from what he had been told was not good enough for him. But testing it himself was good. "Huh. Just do it, Ichigo," Yuriyuki yelled. "It will be a good test for you." She was interested in how Ichigo would do against a man like Naruto. "Okay," Ichigo said, still looking unsure of himself. Without another thought, he rushed towards Naruto in an impressive show of speed. He appeared behind Naruto and swung his sword across his back. Naruto did not turn around, he simply disappeared, leaving an afterimage. He appeared behind Ichigo while the teen was still moving in momentum of his swing. He placed his palm on Ichigo's back and pushed him forward. The teen stumbled forward but got his balance quickly and turned around to take a swipe at Naruto. The blade sped towards Naruto's head. The blonde simply raised his right hand and caught Ichigo's blade, surprising the teen. "Fear," Naruto stated, looking straight at Ichigo. "You are not afraid of me, but of something. With that look on your eyes you cannot cut me, child, or anyone. The sharpness of your blade is reflected by what you feel inside. When controlled by fear your blade becomes dull." He flicked Ichigo's blade out of his hand and turned towards Urahara and Yuriyuki. He left the teen standing as he was. He was quite disappointed with the child. Despite having impressive Ryutsu, the fear nullified all that. His power was nothing when fear dominated his mind. His Zanpakuto would reflected nothing but fear. "You have quite a lovely place," Naruto commented as he made his way towards the former captains. He did not wait for Urahara to comment. "I have come to speak with you." Yuriyuki and Urahara looked between them before the former nodded. "I will take Ichigo to the other side to continue with his training," she said. Naruto looked at the woman. Ichigo was quite impressive for a human. To be able to stand up against a captain was no ordinary feat, especially for a mere human. Perhaps if it had been a Shinigami then he would not have said anything. "Training cannot help that child," he started. "He needs to face his fears. If he cannot deal with what scares, then he should put his blade down and quit playing Shinigami. It was never a job for humans to begin with." Naruto noticed that when he spoke about facing fears, both the former captains cringed. There was definitely more to it. "Your reaction is quite intriguing," he stated. "Perhaps if it was another time I would have been interested in finding out what the child fears." Neither Yuriyuki nor Urahara had thought he would have noticed. He was highly observant, they would give him that. Urahara had been captain for some time, he was not easy to read. But here Naruto was, a single look and he had already found some interesting information. He had not even asked, they involuntarily gave him the information. They had to be careful so not to give anything out to the man. Without saying anything else, Yuriyuki disappeared. "I thought you had refused the position," Urahara stated, seeing the custom Haori Naruto wore. He had never seen anyone adding a few things to it. But then again, this was Uchiha Naruto. Zaraki had only cut off its sleeves, but it was nothing like what Naruto had done. "Yamamoto played a good card," Naruto responded vaguely. Urahara nodded and said nothing more. By the answer and look on the blonde's face, he knew he was not going to be told what sort of card Yamamoto had played. He could only imagine it had to do with fighting. He could not think of any possible way for the Soteiku to force Naruto into something he did not want to do. "I had thought that I would be the one to come before you first," the former 12th Division captain stated, looking at Naruto calmly. Certainly, he had thought that he would be the one to visit the blonde because of his need for answers. Naruto raised a curious eyebrow. "You have spent time with Shunsui and Jushiro, they told you of some things about me that left you with many questions." He had yet to even speak with those two. He should make some time to see his former friends. They were not as bad as Yamamoto was. Urahara nodded. The man was accurate. He did not think he would be like this. "Anyone would have questions after hearing all about you," he stated with a small smile. "Everyone always has questions," Naruto said, slipping his hand inside his cloth. He retrieved a folded scroll and threw it at Urahara. "I want you to decipher that scroll. Retsu tells me you are a genius of some sort." Urahara was certainly interested in what was in the scroll. He opened and saw words in an ancient language. He looked carefully at the words, and then realized it was some sort of a formula. He looked at Naruto again, this was ancient language, and he did not think such writing would exist. What is it? Like that it looks like a formula. What is written in there is a key. It is set like a puzzle that I cannot solve. It was the last 100th key to unlocking a seal that was placed within him. He had already deciphered 99 of them already. But the last one had proved nearly impossible to solve. He had tried all his wits to put it together into a key. As it was now, it was just pieces of the key. Without putting it together, it was useless. Being the last key, it held two functions, all of which were important. A key? Urahara asked with a thoughtful look on his face. He wondered what the key could unlock. How Naruto came into possession of such scroll with ancient language. He was sure even the Soteiku would have no luck in understanding the language. Naruto threw another scroll at Urahara. This second scroll has the seal in today's language. I made it so that you could understand what is written. But do not attempt to solve the puzzle using the second scroll. As you will notice, that second scroll only has word explanations. Can you read this language? Naruto nodded. What do I get for this? First, I don't even know what this key unlocks. Naruto smiled slightly. He snapped his fingers and a garganta opened. Urahara would surely try to figure out what the key unlocks. But he would not figure it. Kisuke of course raised a curious brow seeing Naruto open the portal. You said that you wanted answers. Solve that puzzle and I will give you answers. A little brain teaser is something that a scientist would miss. With that, the blonde stepped into the garganta and disappeared. Liar, a voice said within Naruto's head as he disappeared. It did not take long for Urayuki and Ichigo to appear before Urahara. What did he want? Help, Urahara responded with a slight smile on his face. Although Naruto had not said anything, it was obvious that this key was a secret and the fact that he would be busy putting it together ought to be kept a secret. Ichigo looked frustrated. He had been asking Urayuki who the man was, but she had not answered his question. She had told him to focus on his training. But he could tell that the man was a captain by the emblem on his haori. But still, he had not seen the man during his short stay at Soul Society. Will you tell me who he is already? Urahara looked at Ichigo with a look that seemed foreign. Ichigo, go upstairs and rest a little. Urayuki and I will be there after we have discussed a few things. The only response Urahara got was a deep scowl and a visibly frustrated Ichigo walking away from him and his childhood friend. The former captain sighed and pocketed the scrolls he had been given. He looked back at Urayuki. It was clear she was waiting for him to explain some things. Like I said, Urayuki, he wanted me to help him with something. I will keep it to myself for now, the former captain stated. Urayuki glared at him. How long have we known each other, Kisuke? The man sighed. Urayuki, I will explain once I have the answers. For now, I don't have any answers. He just gave me a puzzle that I need to solve. Until I do that, I cannot explain what it is, he explained truthfully. Urayuki nodded, getting the feeling that he was being honest with her. I was surprised that he could deflect your attack like that, she said, changing the subject. I was not surprised, Urahara stated. Still, he did notice that to do so, he used his stronger hand. Everything was done with his right hand. He also seemed not to be surprised by Ichigo's speed, even though the teen was in his Bankai state. Well, it was obvious that Ichigo was not going as fast as his Bankai could allow him to because of his fears. I guess that is to be expected, Urayuki resigned tiredly. That was the second time I saw someone catch Ichigo's sword. First it was Aizen with a mere finger, now him. Both were not even trying. There are some strong beings that exist. The Soteiku is not the only one who installs fear into his opponents by his power. Urayuki nodded. He is quite perceptive though, she stated. I cannot disagree with you on that one. So what were you able to get from him? She could count on her friend to have found something on the man. He did not give away anything, Urahara responded. The man was just unreadable. Staring into his eyes did no good either. They were kind of hypnotic. But from what I have heard and seen, I think I have found something. I am not sure of it yet. What is it? When he was released, the technique he used was Zero. We know that he does not have his real Zanpakuto. He has not displayed any Shinigami powers as of yet. When he left now, instead using the same gate as any captain or Shinigami, he used a Garganta, a hollow technique, Urahara explained with a thoughtful look on his face. Are you saying that he cannot use any Shinigami powers? It is only a theory. And it is still early days. We will see as the days go by. Many years ago, flashback. Takemi. Yes, Amaterasu. How long are we going to be alone in this part of this world? I don't know, Naruto answered truthfully. The other souls are quite pathetic. No matter how much I try to restrain my power, they just can't stand it. We are going to become bored soon enough. Perhaps we should go to the hollow world. There should be some hollows there that would entertain us, Amaterasu suggested. You know my teleportation technique is limited with a part of me inside of you. And I need to have seen the place before to be able to teleport, Naruto responded as he looked at the forlorn skies. He was alone with no one by him. Souls that spent much time near him did not end well. He was forced to live in a secluded area. How his life was boring. Nothing had ever been normal ever since he woke up in the Rungoki. That day he awoke, he only had vague memories, a part of him was missing. But that was some time ago before he even created Amaterasu. He held power that Shinigami craved. He did not wish for the power to leave him, it was his to command. He had been blessed with it. And he would use it to get what he wanted. Can't you generate enough power to bypass that? No, Naruto responded. But if I could find a hollow and get inside its mind, I can be able to get a picture of the... Naruto trailed off as his senses picked up some activities not far from him. He had thought he was alone at this part of Soul Society. What is it? It appears there is a group of Shinigami close by, Naruto answered. Those pathetic black fools. They abused their power, using it to subject the weaker to their wills. It disgusted him to no end. Amaterasu's voice disappeared from Naruto's head as the blonde took the directions of the souls he had sensed. He was using some low-level speed to get to the group. He was in no hurry to get there. He was going to end the fight quickly, after all. Upon reaching the group, he found them making loud noises. They were seated in a circle with two nearly naked young women dancing in the middle. The expressions of the women were that of a fearful one. His presence was quickly noticed due to his high level of Ryutsu. All the Shinigami then turned towards him with narrowed looks. They knew him by their looks. They had been trash that he had allowed to live before. Today he would allow the trash to disappear. I would imagine that this is what weak-minded fools do. You disgust me. It's that kid again, one said standing up. Go away, kid. Let us just kill him. It will be payback for what he did last time. Naruto cut off any resuming arguments. He really hated using his sword for weak fools. Perhaps he should create a secondary blade for this cause. He released large amounts of Ryutsu that froze all the men. He disappeared in a burst of electrifying speed and appeared in the middle of the group. The women were already down due to the effects of his Ryutsu. He only looked at them while the Shinigami remained frozen under the pressure of his Ryutsu. The two women were then sucked into a swirling vortex within seconds. They disappeared from view. Now then, to take out the trash, he said to himself as he turned to the still frozen souls. Within seconds all 17 of them were down, dead. It was quite disappointing when they did not fight back. That was disappointing, his blade spoke his thoughts. Yes, it was. Naruto held out his blade. Perhaps I should free those women, he thought. Where are you going to take them when you do that? Nowhere, they can find home on their own, Naruto responded with a shrug. Besides, I do know, again, he trailed off as his senses picked up something. A strong man, very strong, was coming towards him, fast. He had not felt anyone this strong ever since he awoke. A few seconds later, someone appeared before him. He was still holding Amaterasu by his hand. He narrowed his eyes at the man with nothing one could read on his face. Inwardly, Naruto smiled. Finally, he thought. Like in Peace Seeker, my/n will be on top. This is only temporary though. The chapter may have some mistakes, I hope it is nothing irritating. I did not have the right equipment to edit it. I will probably update it later when the guy editing this chapter gets back to me. I just thought since it has been long I updated, I should make this one available. Now, things may appear to be going well for Naruto, but you will find out soon enough that he can be outsmarted. And it won't be pretty when he gets outsmarted. I am having some problems writing this story, so I doubt it will reach 20 chapters. I won't leave it before I complete it though. Naruto appears invincible and will be so until the end of chapter 9 where he will brought down to nothing. I won't spoil anything, so I'm gonna stop right there. But I just wanted to know that since everything will going according to plan until the unexpected happens. The fall from grace will be revealed soon. But just to give you something, it happened a long time ago, and only the Soul King knows about it. Naruto and the Spirit King have a history together, it will be revealed soon. I know this chapter also has some questions, but I do believe that it does answer the question of what exactly is the power that is sealed within Naruto. I will explain a few more things in the next chapters. Well, anyway, thanks for the reviews. And I have been searching for a beta to edit my material, but I have not found any luck. The person who is willing to help has been busy. Anyone willing to help, PM me. The help will be much appreciated. On another matter, I have removed my story, The Rejected Hero. I will explain much more about it in my profile once I update it. Chapter 4. Naruto stood at the Sokyoku Hill watching all of Shirai. It was such a quiet place now, and it seems that the laws have become relaxed unlike the old days. The only thing that was out of the Soul Society's control was him. No one could control him. Even if they gathered all the strongest men in the spiritual world, no one could control him. Being controlled by someone was beyond anyone. Not even the Soul King could come close to achieving that goal. It was the same as trying to manipulate him. He refused to be manipulated. The reality might be that he was still forced to act as a captain for the Godai 13, but that did not mean that he was under anyone's control. He was merely playing a part that he would abandon soon. Nothing was permanent. Genri Yusai could enjoy his false victory for now. But Uchiha Naruto is never down. The only way to bring him down is to kill him, but there was a problem with that. He could not be killed by any living Shinigami or Hollow. The old Godai 13 was very strict and powerful. Yamamoto did anything to win. The old man was truly cold and heartless during those days. He had no trouble in sacrificing his subordinates as long as he could win. Perhaps he was still the same, but he could feel that the Soteiko was no longer the same as he was back then. He had now become old and soft. But his power still remained. It was still no power that would give him nightmares. There was no one with power that would give him fear. Only his own power he could make him afraid. It was beyond what anyone could imagine. They had not yet seen anything. All they have been seeing were mere illusions. They would one day see his glory, and then they would know why he is god of the spirit world. The little charade with Aizen was no problem to his recovery. In fact, it would prove to be beneficiary to him. The child Aizen seemed to be full of tricks and wits. Perhaps he should visit the child and see him with his own eyes. That would certainly be a good plan. But he would have to finish some business first. It was still early months. It had been 3 months since he was unsealed. That was why he had been able to see that Soul Society was different from the past. But it was no consequence to him. The more interesting things became, the more fun he had. His lieutenant was pretty much useless. She was weak-minded and somewhat a lost child. He did not like to handle mundane affairs in his division. He had no time to deal with hollows that he could kill by just flicking his fingers. He had no time to do paperwork. He let those beneath him handle those matters. But over the time, he had drilled in a strong attitude to the girl. It was a little better than when he had her discharged from mental care. It had been quite a scuffle with Retsu as the woman was not pleased with her patients being released before they could completely recover. But he did not operate like that. Out of all the worthless Shinigami he had to tolerate in his presence, she was the only one who was capable. That was why he forced her to be released and return to work. Naruto looked the sky with an unreadable expression on his face. "It is starting," he said silently. A wall of black Ryotsu surrounded him. It came from the ground, not from him. The wall covered all his body and sprouted above the grounds, creating a huge black pillar. The wall would restrain any Ryotsu from leaving the execution grounds. But it was certain the captains and lieutenants would be able to feel it. He had set it up so not to have his leaking Ryotsu disrupt the activities in Soul Society. The Central 46 had been restored again. They would ask him infuriating questions about it, and he did not want to end up killing them all for it. Because the pillar was huge and was at execution grounds, it was quickly noticed by the Soul Reapers. Many rushed to the grounds to see what was happening there. But then the execution grounds began to tremble violently. It was in a scary way that they shook. The fact that they were shaking caused the low-level Soul Reapers to stay away from the grounds in fear. A message was issued for everyone to stay away from the grounds, except for the captains. "What is going on here?" Swaifon questioned, looking at her fellow captains. She was completely in the dark about what was going on inside the pillar of Ryotsu. But whatever it was nothing good. By the trembling of the ground, and the oppressing feeling coming off the pillar, she could tell that there was not a good thing happening in the atmosphere was oppressing, unlike anything she had ever felt before. And each second, the air became even heavier. I don't really know what is going on, Hitsugaya Tuhiro was the first to respond. He looked at the elder captains. Perhaps you might have some insight on this, he stated, seeing the focused look on the oldest of the captains. Yamajiji, Kiraka said without looking at the captain commander, who had not said a word since arriving. Given that he is not with us here and that he is the only one who has given off this feeling even to captains, we can say that he is inside there, he stated. Yamamoto nodded. It is him, there is no doubt about that. I can never forget the scent of his Ryotsu. Even if I can barely feel it, I can never mistake it. He paused for a moment. But that leaves a question, what is going inside there? Where is Shutara, by the way? Jushiro questioned. Should not she have been here to witness this, knowing that it is him? Naruto might have told her not to come here, Anohana stated, bringing some insight. If this was pre-planned, he would have told Shutara-san to stay at the house and ignore the whole mess. That still does not answer what is going on, Swafon stated as she released her own Ryotsu to battle with the oppressing atmosphere around her. I have noticed that our 5th squad captain had been leaking Ryotsu over the past weeks with my equipment, Mayuri stated, smiling. He was the only one who seemed to have an idea as to what was going on here. It always pleased him when things like this happened. It also brought him joy when everyone was clueless except for him. Can you explain? I thought his Ryotsu could not be sensed, Byakuya stated, looking at the grinning 12th Division captain. I doubt your simple mind will be able to understand it even if I explain it to you, Mayuri responded coolly. Perhaps it is not that case, you yourself might be unable to explain the phenomena, Anohana stated with a kind smile that did nothing but to infuriate the 12th Division captain. But before he could retort, a loud thunderous roar escaped from the pillar. The roar had them shut their ears because of its loudness. The roar was glass-shattering, everyone in Siridi heard it. But because of the orders to stay away from the execution grounds, they all stayed put. This was followed by large cracks on the execution grounds. The cracks stemmed from the pillar and outstretched a few feet away. Within those cracks a dark black smoke began to arise slowly. This was followed by what seemed to be black flames in all the cracks that had appeared from the ground. The ground had stopped trembling by now. The oppressing atmosphere only continued to become even heavier, forcing all the captains to release their own Ryotsu to counter it. It was then that a piercing scream followed. It was definitely the voice of Uchiha Naruto. It was certain that whatever he was going through was painful. If one did not certainly know him, they would pity the man. Anohana realized that he might have been losing his power. Naruto had confirmed to her that his Reisu had started to leak out of his body. But it was faint, so no one could feel it. Mayuri had just confirmed it with his equipment. But still, this atmosphere was not of a person who was losing power but of one who was gaining power. Had Naruto lied to her? No, he would not have. She had never heard him scream like that. He never even raised his voice loudly. The painful scream continued for several minutes, before finally dying down. Then the oppressing atmosphere disappeared into thin air. The flames that had been acting up in the cracks disappeared. This caused the captains to sigh in relief and stop releasing their own Ryotsu. Cracks began to appear on the pillar, one by one. The sound of glass shattering invaded the ears of the captains. After a few minutes had passed, the unthinkable occurred. Boom! A heavy Ryotsu exploded along with the pillar and crushed the younger captains, forcing them down their knees. The older ones remained standing. All of Siridi came to a standstill. Yamamoto had his eyes now fully opened. A furious wind then threatened to throw them off the execution grounds, but they stood still. All the debris died down and Ryotsu became unbearable for the younger captains. The debris died down, and within a few moments, they could now see a swirl of pure black flames. The flames swirled around in midair for a few moments before in an instant, they disappeared, revealing a figure. They then appeared above him and seemed to compress before forming a black, thin blade. The blade seemed to descend down beside figure, until it stopped in air at his side. The figure had blonde hair reaching down his waist. His face was looking up the sky. Uchiha Naruto. He was dressed in a simple white cloak and had nothing on his feet. His body stood motionless for a few moments and none of the captains dared to speak. His body then seemed to twitch and he held out his right hand. The blade fell on it and he grabbed it by its handle. Slowly his head then moved to face the captains. When they saw his face, they noticed a notable change. He looked younger, perhaps like a 19-year-old in human years. His eyes were also closed. Naruto held out his right hand and looked at it. His eyes were still closed as he did this. I have regressed to my youth look, he said to himself. His tone was just dead, devoid of any life or emotion. It actually made a few of the captains uncomfortable. He walked towards the captains without his feet touching the ground and his eyes still closed. He stopped in front of them and his closed eyes looked at the younger captains. How weak, a power of this level frightens you. A moment ago, you could not even stand Shinjakuni, you have not trained these children well, Naruto stated in the same deathly tone. Yamamoto did not say anything and Swyfon only settled for a glare at the blonde. Are you blind? Kiraku asked suddenly, seeing the blonde not having opened his eyes. No, Naruto responded without even looking at the man. But I have temporarily lost my eyes. The eyes I have now only see black and white. It makes using them useless. But it is only temporarily. Can I see them? Mayuri asked with interest. Naruto looked at the man and opened his left eye slightly. The reaction was instantaneous. The captain backed away from the blonde with cold sweat running over his face. Fear gripped his heart like the claws of a Vastolord had found its way towards his heart. It felt like his heart was being pulled out of his body. He felt as though his life was being crushed. The cold grip of fear had plowed through his chest. The full weight of the blonde's Ryutsu was on him. Just by looking at his eyes, he could see the pools of power the man had, and there was this roar inside his head that felt like each time it roared, it was coming close to him. And when Naruto closed his eyes, everything he felt disappeared. Naruto's eyes were pure black. They were just like an endless void of darkness. There was something else behind the darkness, Mayuri could not quite place it. What did you do to him? Swyfon almost yelled at him, seeing the proud and prideful Mayuri wimping out in front of other captains. How loud, Naruto said. He did not even bother to look at the captain. He looked at the Ryutsu of Anohana. Looking into my eyes makes one see and experience the measure of my power to some extent. You must know what happens when Yamamoto releases his Shikai in front of anyone other than a captain. That was a lie. Well, not the Yamamoto part. What Mayuri had experienced was but a mere illusion. It was a trick played by his mind because of the potency and density of his Ryutsu. And it only happened because his Ryutsu was still moving about the atmosphere. Should the man look into his eyes again, nothing would happen. He would only see the endless darkness. You said the eyes you have now, does this mean you don't have the eyes you had before? A curious Byakuya questioned the blonde. He was not the only one to have picked up on that. But he had been the first to question. No, the blonde responded. I have not lost my eyes. As I said, it is only temporary. He was not going to explain what had happened or anything else about his eyes. It was a bothersome task and it would do him no good to tell them. It was best to keep it to himself. The captains already knew him enough to know that he was not going to give any more answers to that question. Yamamoto closed his eyes before opening them again. His stuff hit the ground to silence everyone so he could speak. He did not want anyone interrupting him while he spoke. He had given them enough time to speak. You cannot actually see, can you? Naruto's expression remained impassive as his face moved to the figure of Yamamoto. What makes you say that? The blonde asked, not even sounding the least curious to find the answer from the Soteiko. It is just a conclusion I came up with since I have observed you so far, the oldest-looking captain stated, looking straight at Naruto. It was a bit unnerving to have the blonde look at him with his eyes closed. The eyes of a person spoke always communicated. But with them being closed, he could never get any message. Naruto seemed to think of a response. I can see. As I said, my current vision with my eyes is black and white. These eyes can only see only that which is spirit. Anything that is not spirit can be felt by my other senses. So you can say, I can see more than you can of the world around you, the blonde explained calmly. So even if he could not see, his senses took over and made him see everything. Yamamoto was silent for a few moments before looking at Naruto sternly. Are you going to explain what had just happened now? He said in a flat tone. Naruto flicked his blade. The blade had 5 small holes on its black hilt. One of Naruto's finger found its way into the middle hole before the sword was spun around the finger like a fan. When it stopped spinning, the blonde flicked it again and held it rightly. It then became engulfed in black flames. When the flames disappeared, the sword was just a normal katana. But its hilt was dark red. The blonde then snapped his left fingers, but nothing happened. He did this while the captains waited patiently for him to answer Yamamoto's question. The unexpected, finally Naruto responded to the question. It was not a response that neither of the captains had been expecting. What do you mean? Anohana was the first to question. You recognize this appearance, don't you Yamamoto? The captain commander nodded. It is the appearance I had when you recruited me into the Shinigami Academy. You told me that I was a shell of my former self. In truth, I was, literally. So what had just happened now, was the shell shattering, and this resulted in what you see now. The fact that this happened while you were here means that you knew it was going to happen. But when you say unexpected, are you saying that you were not expecting it to end this way? Yamamoto questioned curiously. If you have regressed to this appearance, does this mean that your power has also regressed to that state? Still sharp as ever, Naruto commented shortly after Genri Yusai had spoken. What? Swaifon questioned. Are you saying that all that power he released was the power before he evolved? Naruto had evolved after he had left the Godai 13, as to what they were told. By the time Yamamoto recruited him, he had yet to evolve, which means not as powerful. But the power he had released was more than anything she had ever experienced before. He said he was a shell, literally, Mayuri intervened. It could mean that he was a shell that was containing his former power. And when the Reisu exploded, it broke through the shell. The power that was released in his shell state. It was not in this form. So it could mean that he does not have that power we felt a few moments ago, Toshiro stated, adding to Mayuri's theory. All the captains looked at the blonde to see what he would say about their theories. Despite being weak, your children have sharp minds, Naruto stated looking at Yamamoto. His feet then touched the ground. That is true, I have lost my evolution. But you must not forget Yamamoto, no one knew the true extent of my power even at this form. But even so, you are no longer as powerful as you were when I fought you. He paused for a moment trying to see if Naruto would object. Your blade, it is similar to Amaterasu in its Shikai, but in its sealed state, it is different. That is because it is not Amaterasu. But you knew that already, did you not? The flames that engulfed it were not in fact flames. You saw that. What you don't understand is what it was. Let me enlighten you then, it was pure riot. So Naruto paused for a moment. Well, that is enough questions, I will take my leave. With that he was gone without a trace of him left. That man infuriates me. I don't even know why he is even allowed to leave. He caused all this commotion and he has the decency to leave us when he wills. Central 46 won't be happy about this, Swaifon stated. I will handle Central 46, Yamamoto stated. You just make sure that you keep everyone calm and that there is no trouble. With that the captain commander disappeared off to Central 46 before they could summon Naruto without informing him. Naruto might not be as strong as he was, but he was still the same. Given how stubborn Central 46 tended to be, Naruto would certainly do something. He did not want another massacre. That man is just trouble. Again, Swaifon was first to speak. She clearly held no love for the man, it was certain. He should be apologizing for making this ruckus. Swaifon Teiko, yelling like that will not solve anything, Anohana stated in a calm tone. She then disappeared off to calm down her squad. One by one, the captains left the execution grounds. Under Squad 5 barracks. The events had been unexpected. He had not expected things to flow the way they did. Everything had been according to his plan, until this. He disliked it when things did not go according to plan. But it was alright since it had worked for the better. But in this way, the Soul King will be keeping a rather close on him. Still, he would have to be awake to do that. He was sure that the sleep-obsessed fool would not have gone back to sleep after his release. What really happened? The voice of Amaterasu spoke to him within his head. The part of his soul had already separated itself from Amaterasu. After that, he was only waiting for the time his body would give up. He had to be where the portal his soul was trapped within. That place was the execution grounds. When his body gave up, and shattered to reform again, his soul would also lose shape. During this process, the part of his soul within the portal would come to him and they merge with the other half. But the merge could not be complete, it would be imperfect. He would need to consume something powerful to complete the merger. Still, because his evolution would be lost, he would have lost much of his power. But he could no longer be at risk. That was what he had expected things to go. He did not expect him to intervene with the process. What he had been conscious was that he had been sleeping because of the seal. But the process he was going through must have somehow weakened the seal, only slightly though. But it was enough for him to wake up and act. Perhaps he had been awake this whole time. He intervened with the process and used his power to perfect the merger of my soul. He is also responsible for making me regress to this state. The blade I have now is a small percentage of the power he was able to leak out of the seal when it was weakened. That was certainly unexpected, Amaterasu stated, echoing Naruto's thoughts. Does this mean you are now complete? No, Naruto responded, shaking his head. I do not have you. But all the missing parts of my soul have been formed. My soul is now complete. It will take some time for my body to adjust. But this form makes it easier because it is young. There is also a barrier that has developed. But once my soul and body have adjusted to the changes, they will start to work towards perfection. When that happens, the barrier will cease to exist. Well, at least you did not become weak, as you would have if he had not intervened, Amaterasu said. What is happening to your eyes? Before I was returned here, that thing forcibly made my other eyes disappear. I don't know how he did it, but the consequences were that I had to lose not just my eyes but some of my powers. But because everything was born from my soul, I could manifest them again. I just did not have the power. He gave me the power. At the moment, the darkness as my eyes, is just a veil covering my real eyes while they are still being developed to their full potential. How long will it take? A short time, possibly less than a week, Naruto responded. He did not really have an accurate answer as to when his eyes would be ready to function again. Do you think he did it out of generosity? No, I do not possess such a thing. It would be a disgrace to see me weak. He and I agree on that one. But he still refused to speak to me before the seal strengthened. What really goes on between you two? He and I were one. We were a single being, I was him and he was me. I was God before he was separated from me. Years ago when I was young, and still had many emotions, I fell in love with this woman. She was a lot older than me but I did not care. I loved her, and so I showed her my true power. She was the first person to witness it, not even my grandfather saw it, but he was suspicious. My power scared her, and she tried to seal my power. But it resulted in her splitting me in two. The other half was too powerful, so she sealed him deep inside my soul. That was before your fall from grace, Amaterasu stated. Naruto nodded. Everything is in motion now. No sooner than later, I will be complete. Amaterasu did not respond as she disappeared from his mind after those words. I am one who is above all powers. Naruto looked towards the ceiling of his lab. He sighed, realizing that all he could see was darkness. Despite this being a good thing, it bothered him how much. He was able to intervene on things and do as he pleased. He had no problems with him, but this was his body and he was the one with the superior will. He was the original, anything happening should be because he allowed it to happen. He did not think that he would do anything to harm him. Despite the other half being much dark, they were still the same person. But the fact that he had been left vulnerable to made him feel not so happy. He was proud to being in charge of everything, but here, he had not been in charge. Well, I should not complain, the blonde said to himself. I can move forward with everything. This only changes the direction I will have to take. But in the end, it will lead me to the same point. And it is still I who caused the change. Perhaps I am becoming obsessed with control issues. Now he would not have to worry about retrieving the small part of his soul that was missing. Everything was inside his body. He now had all the materials, but his body and soul would have to adapt first for him to move on to the next step. His eyes would manifest soon, and when they do, he will be pleased. But given that now he could not view the world in a way he wanted, he would have to remain rooted at this place. But it was no bother, as long as he would soon get his bright vision back. Sacrifices were necessary for the greater good. He had thought that his little show would not attract much attention, but it did. Yamamoto would have certainly gone to the Central 46 to calm them down, but he knew better than that. Regardless who was put in there, they will always have the same attitude. It was like that building possessed those people to think and act as the previous ones. They were certainly not going to accept whatever Yamamoto would say to them. Those fools were only going to be pleased unless the words came out of his mouth. He would have to restrain himself if they speak nonsense. And if he kills them, it would not work good for him. That thing would send his guards to come rushing at him to restrain him. Surely by now, he must know that he was not going to die. No doubt, he was busy planning something. But as long as he kept it low, that fool will settle for keeping a close eye on him. Later, Naruto looked at his blade. It felt strong and its Ryutsu was a lot more potent than his own. Perhaps it was because it was a mixture of his and his. With this blade, he could no longer use his fake Amaterasu. This one was perfect too to be used by him. He could feel it even by holding it that it was no ordinary blade. But it had been ignoring him ever since it was formed. He could not know any of its abilities or its Bankai if it refused to speak to him. He knew that he had imprinted his consciousness upon the blade. But given that he was a lot more moody, he would have to be patient and for him to talk to him. But he disliked carrying a weapon without knowing anything about it. Even when it was made of his power. It is not that I am ignoring you, I have been busy trying to stay within the blade. Finally he spoke, stopping any further thoughts from the blonde. Trying to stay within the blade. Naruto repeated those curious words. But he was a little pleased with the fact that his blade was now speaking. You know that your will always overpowers mine. So given that your power forms half of the blade's power, the will in your power was trying to overwrite my consciousness. The voice did not seem pleased with what had tried to happen. Why did you not just let that happen? I have been unconscious for 1,000 of years in our body. I would like to be alive before you completely consume me. I see, Naruto stated, having realized something. During the time the seal was weakened, you transferred some parts of your conscious into the blade, knowing that after I undo the seal, you will cease to exist. So becoming my blade keeps you alive. This is the result of that woman's meddling. If she had not, we would still be one. Yes. You are mad, you know that. No one would have challenged you after you went back to that dimension. There was no one who could challenge you, even without your true power, but you were not satisfied with that, were you? You are wrong, that thing could challenge me. He just would not be able to kill me. That is why I had to form this risky plan to restore myself completely once I had recovered my memories. I knew that it would always be a challenge to me if I did not reclaim all my being. But still, going through all this, I know that he did not know that he could be a match for you. He might have thought that you were complete. I was not satisfied with being imperfect. And besides, I could not do all that I could without being complete. So what now? I shall call you Shigyaguru, now and forever, Naruto stated. Shigyaguru. You will represent death once I have ascended to heaven, and Amaterasu will represent life. But to shorten things, I will simply call you Shi, Naruto explained. Now, tell me about your abilities. Naruto's house, later that day. I have been looking for you for quite some time, Anohana stated as she appeared on top of Naruto's roof where the blonde was lying down. I have been expecting you to show up, Naruto stated with his eyes still closed. I am a little surprised that you took so long to come. I had some business to take care of before looking for you. When I decided to look for you, I realized you were no longer in your lab. What were you even doing there when you can't see to operate it? Are you mocking me, Retsu? Naruto questioned as the woman went to sit beside him. No, I am just curious. I was thinking, Naruto responded. The lab was his quiet place. The house was also quiet. Where is Shudera? I have not seen her in a number of days. She was summoned to the Soul King's dimension, Naruto responded. Anohana looked at Naruto curiously. What for? She did not want to think that she was there to report everything she has seen with Naruto. If so, Naruto would surely kill her. For her mind to be read, Naruto responded without even looking concerned for the matter. Poor thing, she is not even aware of it. The only reason she was brought to Siridi was for this purpose. You knew she was being used and you still did not tell her. What of the other reason you told her? That is also true. He will know everything and about me too, she stated. It would be trouble for her because she had withheld much information about Naruto from everyone. Shudera knows this, and if her mind is read, she would be discovered. Let it be. He won't do anything so long as I am alive. He already knows that I won't die. I did not even tell Shudera everything, and with the unexpected having occurred, what he will find out will be of no use, Naruto explained. But when you leave again, I will be quiet. Naruto stated in a firm tone. You will not be killed. No one will touch you. And I will not allow you to allow yourself to be killed. Anohana was quiet for a moment. What will you do about Shudera then? I will kill her, but not now. For now, I will let her enjoy her life. But I will send a message to the Soul King to inform him that he should stop using her. He spoke of killing the only woman he cares for like it was nothing. Don't do it, Anohana stated. She definitely did not want Shudera to die. Okay, Naruto responded to Anohana's request. Would you like to see heaven, Yachiroa? I have seen your dimension before. Isn't it heaven? No, Naruto responded, shaking his head. The real heaven, only two have seen it. Only I who is alive now has seen it. Anohana was quiet, again. It was unlike him to ask her a question like that. Normally he would not have made such a request. She wondered what drove him to ask such a question. She could feel that he had not spoken to Shudera about this subject. But here he was speaking to her about it. Are you going to tell me about the unexpected? She said, changing the subject. No, Naruto responded. It is best you don't know this. He paused for a moment when he sensed something. Ah, Shudera is back, he said. Anohana quieted as she waited for Shudera to come to their location. She would certainly sense them and come up here. It took a few moments for Shudera to appear before them. She had an angry look on her face. You knew, didn't you? She demanded, glaring at Naruto. Despite his blindness, he could feel her glare. Oh, so you discovered the reason you were summoned, the blonde stated, knowing why she would glare at him like that. Anohana remained quiet, choosing not to get involved with this matter. Unbelievable. You knew about this and you said nothing. How could you? She looked at Anohana. Did you also know about this? Before Anohana could answer, Naruto spoke. So you will no longer be summoned. Yes, Shudera responded. Good, this settles things, Naruto stated as he got up. You will no longer feel some sense of loyalty to that thing. Shudera then noticed his appearance. What happened to you? Although he had gone back to wearing the attire he wore when he visited the human world, his face could still be clearly seen that it had become younger. The unexpected, Naruto responded as he walked past Anohana. I am going to rest my body. After what I went through today, I have to sleep for some time. Don't wake me up. With that he was gone. Do you know? Shudera questioned Retsu to see if she was aware of the unexpected. There was a possibility that Naruto had told her. But even if he had told her, she would not tell her. That was not important though. What she wanted to confirm was if she was told or not. No, Anohana said, shaking her head. He did not tell me anything. He only said it was best I did not know. I think that also extends to you. Cold bastard, Shudera muttered. He refuses to tell me everything, and he threatens to kill me. I don't think I can handle this anymore, she said, sitting down tiredly. Anohana offered no words of comfort. She thought this was better than being killed. But it was certain that if she thought of leaving Naruto, he would kill her for that. Naruto did not accept rejection. But she was not going to say anything. Shudera was aware of this fact. And it was not her place to say anything. The following day, Naruto walked out of his slumber room with an impassive look on his face. Shudera was close by him. It was very much annoying that he had to be awake from his sleep. His body was torn apart and then reformed again. His body had been torn up to pieces and put together, literally. The process was painful, hence he needed his rest. But these fools had the audacity to force themselves to his house. Finally, the captain of the 2nd Division said, releasing a sigh. Central 46 won't be happy with you after all the efforts it took to get you to leave your room. She smirked at the thought though. With this, Naruto would get in trouble for this. She would gladly see him get punished. Naruto walked towards the woman, his eyes still closed. The Ryotsu he was releasing was deathly. It caused the members of the covered court to step away from the blonde. Naruto stopped in front of Swafon. He opened his eyes, forcing her to go through the same experience as Mayuri. While she was still going through the ordeal, Naruto grabbed her neck. He left her unable to breathe properly with his grip. His left hand pierced through her left shoulder like it was made of steel. Arg! Swafon shrieked out in pain. The pain she felt broke her out of her illusionary state. Her group was quick to try to attack Naruto, but the blonde quickly took out his blade. Naruto, you will end up destroying the house, Shudera stated with a calm look on her face. She had told Swafon that Naruto had told her that he should not be awakened. She knew he would react like this. She did not care though. And there was the fact that she was still angry at being used. Naruto disappeared from the house and went a distance away. He looked towards the covered core as they appeared before the blonde. He drew out his sword. Bastard! You will pay for this. Pay? Naruto questioned in a hollow tone. Swaifon charged towards him in a bleeding state. Naruto sighed as he opened his left eye. She was a little bit fast for a child. But she was still a child nonetheless. A half-formed Sharingan appeared on his left eye. As soon as the women reached him, he released his Ryutsu, freezing her enough for him to move towards her and gripped her by her neck, for the second time. I have no time to play with children, he stated. But you have annoyed me. His left eye was forced to fully develop. It turned into the eternal Mangekyou. Now then, experience hell. Nothing came out of Swaifon's mouth as within the next second, she fell down the ground. The rest of the covered core tried to attack him, but Naruto raised his right hand. A black ball of energy began to form at an insanely fast speed on his right palm. But before Naruto could release it, another wave of heavy Ryutsu hit the area. The blonde's technique disappeared from his hand and he turned around to look at Yamamoto with his one opened eye. He closed it because it was painful as he had forced its development by pushing much of his power to make it happen. What is the meaning of this? Yamamoto questioned, looking straight at Naruto. His other eye was looking at the fallen Swaifon. She was still alive. Naruto did not respond. He took a few steps before going towards Central 46. Yamamoto did not attempt to stop him. He had put the other captains at the entrance of the place to stop Naruto from getting in. He knew that those fools had called him, but in this state, it was best he not go there because he would kill them. Shudera, what happened? Yamamoto questioned the woman who was merely watching everything. Naruto's body and soul were torn apart yesterday before they were put back together. You must imagine how painful the process might have been. And how stressed his body must have been after the process. He had decided to sleep for a few days to allow his body to rest, and he gave me one instruction: don't wake me up. Whether Soul Society had been invaded by hollows, don't wake me up. Whether someone close to me is about to be killed, don't wake me up. Whether the end of the world has come, if I am sleeping, don't wake me up. Don't wake me up meant don't wake me up to Naruto. Yamamoto knew this. He shook his head silently. He had warned Swaifon to stay away from the blonde, but she never listens. Will you take her to the 4th Division's barracks? Central 46. Why did you do that? She questioned, not sounding the least amused by what Naruto had done. Do what? Naruto asked. He had done a lot of things. She had to be precise on what he was questioning. Force one of your eyes to develop fully like that. Do you know the consequences of doing something like that? What are the after effects? Naruto questioned as he made his way towards Central 46. He could feel the strong Ryutsu of the captains waiting for him there. Yamamoto should also come here. Given his state, he could not afford to fight Anohana, Jushiro, Kiraku, and the Soteiko at once. He would not win such a battle. His current power was enough to handle Yamamoto, not without the others. I told that the seal had weakened when you regressed to this state. Given that, I was able to allow a part of my consciousness into your inner world. The seal had yet to regain its full strength after that process, but when you slept, giving rest to your body, it regained its full power. And because of your mood, and forcing that power to be active when it's not ready, I am going to disappear in a matter of seconds. So it's true, nothing of you can exist outside of the seal while it is still active and at full power, Naruto stated, not sounding concerned with the development. But the blade can exist because it is no longer you, but something new made of you and I. She never replied to those words. His consciousness was already forced back into the seal. Naruto did not mind it though. It changed nothing. But at the same time it showed that the seal was truly powerful, that woman was truly a genius with seals. How long has it been within his body? How long has he been trying to break it? If she was alive it would have been a different story. He would have simply forced her to undo it. He had ways to make her do it. But she was dead and she was the only one who knew of the seal. She never kept notes about it. All he had been doing over the past years was studying it. But even though he had studied it, he had been unable to unlock it. Only a single key remained though. I am afraid we cannot allow you to go through, Naruto heard as he reached the gates of Central 46. Naruto looked at the captains. Perhaps he should fight them and relieve the fact that women outsmarted him. He had been unable to break the seal she placed on him, on his very own soul. But she was below him in power, but she had done this to him. He had gone through much pain yesterday and his left eye was causing him severe pains because of the forced development. His other eyes were also affected because of this. He could feel that their development had been halted. This was going to slow things down. Who was going to pay for all these? Ah, there are still those Vastolord he had sealed in a safe place at Hueco Mundo. He had kept them there so he could devour them when he had become weak. But now he did not have the means to devour them. It was no matter, he could just go and destroy them. That should release some pent-up frustrations. He opened his eyes as it lit up slightly. He was sucked up in a vortex of blackness. He disappeared without a trace of him left.